get started. I know it's very exciting to start networking. We're going to get started. Oh, wow, that actually worked. Okay, I'm just going to give the people in the back just a second to sit down, and then we're going to start this amazing day. Okay, super. Grab your coffee, Susan. All right, well, on behalf of the Chicago Network, it's my honor to welcome you to the Launchpad Women's Leadership Summit 2025. My name is Francesca DeBiase, and I am the board chair of the Chicago Network. I'm thrilled to be with you today. We're celebrating Launchpad's 11th year of learning and networking. It started in 2014 as a 90-minute session before our Women in the Forefront luncheon, which I was talking with some of the folks at my table, some of who've attended, but that is our really signature event of the year where we have about 1,200, mostly women. And it started as a 90-minute session prior to that, just to try to get a few women together, and it has just blossomed into this amazing transformational journey of empowerment and really tailored professional development for women. And it was started really also just as a need to help women get to the C-suite. That's really why we did this. And you're here because you are each dedicated to your own professional and personal development by taking this day off. You're the best of the best. You're a top performer, a current or emerging senior leader who is going to be the future of women's leadership in Chicago and the future of the Chicago Network. We have an extraordinary program for you today. Our theme is Play to Win. And we hope that it's going to inspire each of you to step boldly into your potential and take strategic decisions and embrace a growth mindset, ultimately empowering you to achieve your goals with confidence and resilience. We're honored to have a lineup of seasoned leaders and experts who have shattered the glass ceiling, and they're ready to share their experiences and strategies with you. Now, Launchpad is not just about learning, it's about building a community. So I ask you to really take the time to meet these leaders, spend time with people at your tables, and also at the networking session after, make sure you take the time at that networking to really build your own community. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce the Chicago Network President and CEO, Maria Doughty.
I have to put that mic down just a bit. I've got heels on, but can't get to that point. Please let me add my heartfelt thanks for joining us today. You know, it brings me immense joy to see all of you in this room, and I promise your time and investment in Launchpad will be met with inspiration, with growth, and a powerful network of women leaders who are going to be ready to support you. This event would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors, so please give me a moment just to thank these individuals and organizations personally. In terms of the universe sponsors, so our big premier sponsor, State Street Investment Management. So thank you to State Street. Grateful to your support. And they've got women here from all over the country, so we're thrilled to have them. Galaxy, again, another amazing sponsor and tremendous champion of women and all things higher education and learning, the University of Illinois Geese College of Business. So thank you. In terms of our lunar sponsors, we have Blue Steen Ventures, Nielsen IQ, my Nielsen team is back there, PwC, I know that you're in here too, William Blair. So thank you all of our lunar sponsors. Yes, thank you. And then finally, our rocket sponsors, get the theme, the different levels. Okay. Caroline Ross, Inc., JP Morgan Chase Bank, private bank, Yanni Gordon, Kathy Shearer, and Chicago State University. So thank you all to our lunar sponsors as well. I'd like to give a very special thanks to the Chicago Network Launchpad Committee. There's a committee of women that help put this event together and help us identify speakers. So thanks to all of you who've given your time. And a big thanks to my Chicago Network team that you're out there, Laura, Ellen, and Nathan. Thank you so much for always being supportive and always ready to take on whatever we have throwing at you. A few housekeeping matters. There's on your table, there's a number of handouts, but one of them is a contact list of the persons that are here today. So please, 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 keep in touch with these people. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to stay connected. We will be recording today's session. Please feel free to change seats if you want. People do that at Launchpad. And we would love for you to stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn. We have a weekly newsletter that you can subscribe to. We have 3,000 followers and subscribers to the newsletter, independent from the Chicago Network members. So please do that. I think you guys know where the bathrooms are. Consider turning your phones off or flipping them and just being present. I know it's really super hard, but we will take breaks so you'll be able to pop in and out. So let's get started. First, let me please introduce Susan Gallagher. She is president of the consulting and advisory arm of SRG Partners. They're a global firm that focuses on executive coaching, executive team optimization, new leader and team acceleration, and leadership acceleration. She's one of the past board chairs of the Chicago Network, and she and the company have had an incredible record of working with women and doing research specifically on women. They've coached 30,000 women over the years in terms of helping them achieve that jump into the C-suite and senior leadership experiences. So these are proven track record experts, and we are so excited to have them here. So please help me welcome Susan to the stage. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for being here. I am so excited to hear our speakers today. I know we're all going to learn together. Our opening speaker, I'm here to introduce our opening speaker. Our opening speaker today knows that power comes from inside each of us, and it's the courage to align your strengths and values and lead with authenticity. And we've all heard those words a lot, but this morning you're going to hear how to apply those to your own skills and your own traits. Julie has spent more than 3 decades helping senior leaders step into their power. So Julie Johnson is a managing director at Bravanti ZRG, and she's known for her ability to help leaders discover that kind of power that actually translates into impact. Beyond her work, she's really an adventurer. She loves skiing. She's very creative, and she's known for designing these gatherings where she puts so much detail. Everyone there feels honored to be there and connected. So you want to get invited to one of those gatherings. She is here to help us explore what it means to play to win. And I love working with Julie. I know you will too, so please help me welcome Julie Johnson to the stage.
Good morning and welcome. I want to thank Francesca, Maria, and Susan for such a gracious introduction. I would like to thank each of you for this time and attention that you are sharing with me up here, but also with each other. That is your most valuable asset, totally limited in supply. And so it's a real honor and a privilege for me to be here in your gaze and in your attention. Thank you. So we are going to talk about how to harness your power so that you don't just show up in a room, but when you're there, you play to win. So I live in Denver, and I flew in yesterday in the middle seat of one of those big airplanes where it was the middle section. So the middle of the middle, anybody been there? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I am gonna go talk about my power, and I'm sitting here in the middle seat. I'm like, oh my God, do I need to make a play for the armrest? What do I need to do? But you know, power isn't about winning the armrest. I mean, unless you are the armrest, in the armrest competition. And it's not about magical thinking. It's really about showing up in the space that you are actually in and doing it with intention and alignment with who you are. So I've told you a little bit about some of my thoughts around power. I'd like to just learn a little bit about the room and some of your thoughts, some of our thoughts as a collective experience today around power. How do you feel about being called powerful? And I'd like you to scan the QR code with your phone. So if you turned it off, power it back up. And scan the QR code with your phone and enter the one word that comes to mind that represents how do you feel about being called powerful. I see typing. Oh, these are beautiful. If you've already entered your response, let's take a look at the word cloud. So what are we noticing as these words pop up? Confident, proud, empowered, uncomfortable, dubious, intimidated, nervous, thrilling, imposter, energized, respected, strong, happy, influenced. Anybody surprised that there's a range of emotions, that it's not all positive emotion? Anybody surprised about that? You can raise your hand or not raise your hand. That's kind of a personal question, I suppose. But anybody surprised that somebody could feel totally different from them? That's the thing about power. Power is context specific. Power's personal. And a lot of times it's our experiences with others in power that really shape how we approach it. And so our work here today is to really understand our relationship, our inner relationship to power, and identify some action steps that you can take to get where you want to go. So that even if you're in the middle seat, you show up in the way that is aligned with how you want to be in that place. Let's take one moment. It looks like we've stopped here on our word cloud. So we have confident, proud, empowered, responsible, strong, uncomfortable, unsure, excited, thrilling. I think that's anybody. So I've said, are any of you surprised? Some people were surprised at the range. How many of you feel all those things, all those contradictory things, when you hear the word power? Yeah. Now what I'd like you to do, and there's a handout. I think it's your top handout under your brochure. There's a handout, and there's a question. Just a reflection question. And the reason we do reflection questions like this, I'll just give you a quick background on why we do this. It's really important to link new insights and new knowledge and new approaches. It's really important if we're going to grow, we need to, the brain is associative. And if we're going to grow, we need to link what we're talking about to what's already there. We need to associate it with experiences we've already had. So I want you to start here by thinking of somebody that in your real life, I mean, don't say like Abraham Lincoln or something like that. I mean, say somebody that you actually know in real life that you think of as a powerful leader, and just write down their name. If you're sitting next to them, or you can write in code if that's fine too, but just write down their name. And I just want it to be a real concrete thing for you. So you're not gonna have to share it or anything, but I just want it to be real concrete. So just write down their name. And then I want you to write some notes to yourself about why did you write that person's name? What stands out about that person that made you write their name as being powerful leader? Are there behaviors, actions, characteristics? Just write a few. And what I'm going to have you do is, I'm going to look at my clock here. I want you to take a few minutes. We're going to give you like 4 minutes at the table. So, if you're at a table that's full, that's like 30 seconds a person. If you have fewer people, you get a little more time. So take like 4 minutes. And I want you to share a couple of the characteristics. Not your whole list, just the top 1 or 2 that you came up with for your person. So go ahead and I'm going to be quiet. I'll mute myself so that you can each have a little quick conversation at your table. Go ahead and finish the thought that you're on. And I'm going to ask Laura if we can have some help with a couple of mics. And I would love to hear just a couple of the themes that came up at your tables. So speaking of showing up, playing to win, stepping into your power, who would like to be the first volunteer to share some of the couple of themes at your table? Oh, great. We have one up front here. Thank you. And state your name and where you're from, and then tell us a theme or just one theme that you heard at your table.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Rosie Zelinskas. I am in Orland Park. For those that don't know, it's a southwest suburb, just right outside of Chicago. And one of the things that we talked about we kind of exuded with Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg was kind of a woman that exudes just power and kindness, and she's at such a high level, and she exudes just so many of those executive leaderships, and she was with McKinsey and a lot more things. For me, it was a couple of entrepreneurs that I know that they are persistent, they are consistent, but they show up being grateful and kind. And the biggest thing is collaboration over competition. That's the biggest thing that we are constantly, I'm an entrepreneur, so solopreneur. So in the small business world, we're always trying to encourage and support each other, and collaboration over competition, hands down.
Thank you. Let's have another table share. We've got one up front here. Go ahead and stand up, and they'll bring you a mic. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Denise O'Brien Peterson. I came in from Naperville, which is about 30 miles west of the city. So thank you for having me today. Our table actually thought about a couple of keywords. Humble, authentic really came to mind. And then we also talked a little bit about who were those leaders, or who were those individuals that exuded those qualities. And we were split between men and women. So that was a really interesting conversation we had at the table.
So this table, I'm going to thank you, Denise. You can hand off the microphone, but I'm going to ask a question of the whole group. This table was split. How many of you personally, not your table, but personally, let's just do a raise of hands. How many of you wrote down a woman's name? Okay, look around, lots of hands going up. Now put your hands down, and then just so we can see the contrast, how many wrote down a man's name? Okay, so at the Women's Leadership Network event, we wrote down a lot of women's names. And it's important to know that in our lives, are we only seeing power modeled around us by women? Well, no. I mean, how many of you agree with me? My experience is that most of the people that I see holding power, being powerful, I mean, if I think of my whole life, probably most of them have been men. Anybody else relate to that? So this is nuanced, right? Like, and this is one of the themes you'll hear. Not only is power personal and individual, but it's also context specific. So with that, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more. So thank you to everybody for your conversations. I hope you enjoyed talking at your table. I mean, I think what you'll learn is you here have the greatest insight with all the people you can network with. So that's what we're going to try to do, help you learn even more from each other. But we've brought up some great themes in just these couple of table conversations. So where does power come from? Like, what are the sources of power? And what we're going to do as a group, this is kind of the journey we're going to go on. We're going to discover, the first step is we're going to jump right into this. We're going to discover, that little number 1 on the bottom. We're going to discover, where does power come from? Like, let's really think about it as a tool. And what are the sources of power? What types of power are there? We're then going to take a minute to reflect, self-assess our own connection and comfort with power. Then we're going to spend some time identifying areas where we can lean in and where are there some things that we're doing where we get in our own way. And then finally, we'll close with just one personal commitment to ourselves of what's one thing we could do different to really not just be there, not just be in the room, but really show up in a way that we play to win. So in our work, as Susie said in the introduction, we have the great honor and privilege of working with leaders in many, many organizations. And what we see is that there are we talk about 3 different types of power. The first one is what we call position power. So this is the one that you can really see on the org chart. This is power that comes from title, it comes from role in the organization. People with position power have decision-making authority, they have the authority to spend money, allocate resources, hire, fire. That's position power. And I think I heard some of that in this description from this table here, talking about Cheryl Sandberg, executive roles, right? So there's position power. That is a legitimate and effective, high-impact source of power. Would you agree? It's important. The second one is what we call expert power. Now, expert power derives from my knowledge, experience, and expertise, and my track record in getting things done. So in an organization, you may or may not see this on the org chart. Think about the organizations that you have been integrally involved with. When you really have to solve cross-functional problems, that's that one person that ends up getting pulled into every kind of important task force or project team because they had experience building the original system. They built out the first, they've got all of this expertise, but they may not have a high-ranking position, but they have great expertise. We can also get expert power from credentialing, education, and certifications, right? So expert power sometimes shows up on an org chart, but sometimes it's sort of the hidden, it's sort of more on the hidden org chart. And there's a third type of power that we call personal power. And this is a type of power that comes from within each individual. And this is dependent on a person's confidence, emotional intelligence, authenticity. And I want you to think about these three: position, expert, and personal. A lot of times in organizations, we have mechanisms to help people get position power, right? We have hiring protocols, we have career paths, we have new manager training, right? I'm gonna help you be effective in your position as a manager. We talk about expert power. We put someone on a project so they can get experience in an area. We talk about hiring somebody with a certain background, a certain track record, a certain type of credential. When we work with organizations, the one that we don't hear people talk about out loud is the personal power. And that's to our detriment as female leaders when we are in spaces where many of the position or expert roles might have more men in them, and the techniques and approaches that a man might use for to be an effective, powerful leader may not work exactly for us, so we can't just copy. So it's really important that we think about personal power. There's another reason that personal power is extraordinarily important, but also different from the other two. And it's that personal power you take with you no matter what room you're in. So if I change organizations, my position power doesn't matter in the new organization. You've ever worked with anybody that was like, well, I was a senior vice president over here, so here's what I mean, that's kind of annoying, right? Like their position power doesn't work when you change organizations. Expert power. Have you ever worked with somebody who's perhaps highly credentialed, they have an advanced degree in something, and then they act like the expert in human relations or something that they may not be expert in? It doesn't work, right? It's very context specific. But personal power, you take your personal power with you and you adapt it, whether you're in the middle seat or on the aisle of first class. You adapt it to wherever you are. So where does it come from? So personal power, it's all about your ability to influence decisions, influence people in a way that helps you get where you want to go. But where does it come from? It comes from inner confidence, self-awareness, and authenticity. So I think I even heard this in some of the descriptions from just these two tables. I bet we would have heard this all over the room. It's generated from self-confidence, clarity of values, knowing who you are, emotional intelligence, resilience, authenticity. How many of you heard some of these themes, self-confidence, clarity of values, emotional intelligence, that list? How many of you heard some of those themes at your tables in your discussions? So what you identified is that these people that you have experienced, they're showing up with personal power. So the question becomes, how do we do that as well? Well, before we delve into that, let's do a bit more self-reflection. I'd like you to you can just jot this down. I want you to think about this first. So I don't think there's a place, but just jot down. I want you to have your thoughts in mind. I want you to self-assess on a scale of 1 to 10. Each of the three, assess your comfort with each of these three types of power. So position power, if you're very comfortable with your position power, you're a 10. If you're not comfortable at all, you're a 1. Expert power, what's your personal comfort level with your power that comes from your expertise, your reputation, your experience, your knowledge, your credentials? And then finally, your personal power. How comfortable are you with your personal power? Okay, you have a number. I mean, this is, again, not going on to your performance review. This isn't like a self-assessment at work where I'm going to look at it and then do your review. But I do want to get some anonymized information. So please, once again, pull out your phones. Let's find out a little comparison of what the room looks like, all anonymized. And so you're going to share with us position power. We'll let these move around a bit. When I see the phones go down and I see mostly eye contact, that's when I'll know to move on. Eyes, eyes, eyes. Okay, great. Okay, we are 10, 9, 8. So really heavily tilted to the right. I'm going to take a note of this. Position power. We're mostly around 8. We've got some 7s, some 9s, a few 6s, but the average is 7.4. So 7.3, 7.4, nice. Okay, let's change it, and let's see about the room. How comfortable are we with expert power? Okay, slightly higher. We're coming in just slightly higher. A little closer to 8. 7.6, a few more 7s and 8s, a little closer on the right. Nice. Now finally, personal power. How did you rate yourself in terms of your comfort? This is all about comfort. This is introspection. What a miracle, right? Technology allows us to be publicly introspective. Wow, how cool. And personal power. Impressive. The average is just as high as our expert power. Oh, and we get more in. Now we're seeing a little bit of a different pattern. We have the average is about the same, but we have a little bit more down in the, I guess that's going to be 10, 9, 8, 6, a little bit more in the 6s, 5s than the others. So if we look just at the average, we'd say it's the same, but there's a little bit, it's not quite as much weighted to the, I guess it's for you, right side. Not quite as much weighted to the right side. So this is not at all surprising because we oftentimes are in rooms, not always anymore, it's definitely changing, but I think a lot of us did not just come into the workplace in the last 5 years, right? Like our experience isn't limited to the current moment. Our experience is our whole lives, our whole professional careers, and even what we saw growing up in the cultures and families and institutions that we were a part of for our whole lives. And so we don't always get to see how women build personal power. And here's the secret. I think you guys already know it. Personal power is an inside job. Personal power is an inside job. It doesn't come from anywhere else. So here we have 10 of the best ways, most effective ways to build your personal power. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look at this list and identify where you see that you have a strength, that your personal power comes from. I'm going to time you. I'm going to give you 20 seconds to identify one item where you think you really have a strength. Write it, jot it down, scratch paper, however you jot things down these days. And now that you've had a chance to process and think for yourself, I'd like you to, at your tables, go around and just, you've already gotten to know each other just a little bit, go around and just share quickly what it is your strength. And I'm doing this, you're not going to have a chance to fully unpack these strengths of these amazing women that you're with. But this is called the Chicago Network, right? And there are networking opportunities at lunch and at the end of the day. So you can put a little star by someone's name like, oh, I want to learn from her how she did that. So this is just like a little networking teaser. So take, once again, 4 minutes at your table, just go around and share one. Excellent. Welcome back. Okay, how were those conversations? I heard a lot of energy. Who knows, you might have been talking about vacations. That's good too. But I'd like to know, let's get, we heard from sort of the front left this last time. So now let's go to the sort of the back middle right. Let's hear from a couple of tables about some themes you heard when you were sharing strengths. Were there themes? Was there diversity? Was there something surprising or insightful or something that really resonated with you? Let's get somebody from one of the tables over here. Oh, over right in the center, thank you. And wait for a mic, because it's hard to hear in this room. And say, once again, state your name and the organization you're with.
Okay, Natasha Gallivotti, and I am the founder of my own strategic advisory firm right now. We had beautiful strengths, and after we all went around, we talked about number 3, which is make peace with imperfection.
Oh, yes.
And that was a very collective experience in terms of we want to do everything right, but sometimes it's not going to go that way, and power is just letting that go.
Oh, wow. I feel like that's a mic drop. I should just end right now and send you on your way. Very nice, thank you. Another one, we have another one on this side of the room.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janice Gonzalez. I, too, have my own advisory firm, JMGM Consulting. And what I thought was interesting were the powers that we had in common at the table, which were act with integrity, take decisive action, and surround yourself with empowered people. And I also thought it was interesting about the powers that we would like to strengthen, and that included making peace with imperfection, speaking our truth, and stop seeking permission.
Ooh. Yes, very interesting. Other tables. So we heard this: make peace with imperfection, stop seeking permission. And these comments, do they resonate with other tables? Are they similar? Something different that somebody would like to ask that we're missing? You'd like to give voice to? Yes, we have one right here. Let's wait for a mic though, so everyone can hear.
Okay, Erica Hudson with Kenview Inc. From the northwest suburb of Long Grove, so opposite. We actually had 2 strengths. One didn't get to speak to it fully, but that all of us were like in awe of. And like, I was like, I need to buy you coffee and learn what you do. And those were set strong boundaries.
Oh. And
it was stop seeking permission, right?
Wow.
So we have a lot of coffee we need to do here.
Oh.
Of people who have excelled in those.
And that's great. Wow, very powerful. So here's the thing that's really interesting. The more time you spend with this list, and as executive coaches, and in the business of executive development, helping people transition from one context to another context, here's the thing that you learn. These are all interconnected. These are all integrated. And sometimes you may not have access directly to the one you want to improve. So let's just take make peace with imperfection. How many of you heard some of that around your table? Yeah, okay. That's really hard to do if you don't do number 1, know who you are. If you don't have clarity around your values, around your passion, and about what you want your legacy to be, it's really hard to know what to let go of. And it's really hard to know where you need to stand strong. So there's a connection, right? There's others that have connections as well. For example, I mean, you could probably connect all of these, but one that I think of is around setting strong boundaries. It's a lot easier to do that if you're doing number 10, surrounding yourself with empowered people. And surrounding yourself with people who model how to be empowered themselves, but then also are cheerleaders for you. So sometimes if you don't have direct access to the one you're struggling with, look for a helper. Look for a helper strength to focus on. So, in executive coaching, I'll work with leaders who want to have some kind of an impact, and they're like, oh, well, where do I start? Do I set the goal first and then take action, or do I take action and then set goals based on the results of that? And the answer is start where you have access. So if you are definitely buy people coffee. Do that for sure. Have your conversations. And then explore stair-stepping, integrated, and supportive techniques. This is not easy work. I've got 18 minutes and 43 seconds left. We are not going to drain all of this. You're not going to get to the bottom of this. But it's something for you to take with you, and it's a continual part of our journeys. And I know this is not the first time any of you have thought of this, but just give you a chance to refresh on it. But even when we're doing all the things, we know our values, we're not asking permission, we set boundaries, sometimes there are some outside habits that can get in our way. We call these power robbers. These are behaviors or actions that a lot of times we don't even think about, that are just we're not even conscious of, we're not even aware of. And they detract from our message, and they distract from our personal power. And you'll see the list of these on the back side of the handout. And you'll see is that there is a list of verbal and nonverbal power robbers that can sometimes get in our way. So if that other list was an inside job, personal power is an inside job, a lot of times these power robbers are kind of things on the exterior that we don't think are important, but actually steal our power, steal our impact. And so what I'd like you to do now is one more time, I'm going to hold about a minute and a half. It's a longer list, so I'm going to hold a little bit more silence for you to go through this list and identify any of these that get in your way. Take an honest self-assessment. And are there any of these that you tend to, show up for you and get in your own way? Go ahead and circle the items on this list that get in your way. All right, I'm seeing most of the pens slow down. So this time we're going to do something a little bit different. And instead of full table groups, I'd like you to pair up with the person next to you. If you have an odd number of people at your table, form a triad. So pair up, and if or small groups of 2 or 3. The reason this is important is it gives you a little bit more time to have more back and forth and more conversation on your particular topic. And the tasking, the prompt for your conversations is share the power robbers that get in your way with each other and brainstorm with each other tactics or approaches that could help from from showing up with you, like an unwanted seat partner, right? So take, and once again, we'll give you about 6 minutes. So, I mean, if you divide it down, that's like 3 minutes a person, but pair up, triads. So take a few minutes, each person share and brainstorm. And it sounds like you were having very energized conversations. I was able to walk around and eavesdrop a little bit. And, you know, as I've mentioned, this list can be confusing because you can see somebody do all these things wrong. Oftentimes, you know, you might see a very powerful man who's your wonderful manager, boss, leader for many years. And that person might be your mentor. And that person might do all of these things wrong, yet they still have power. But then you show up and you lean on the furniture and you read, you know, you have your notes. And they end up being detrimental. But that's one of the challenges. This is all an inside job, right? It's all very personal. And so as you navigate stepping into your own power, so that you don't just make it into the room, but that you show up and play to win, as you navigate this, it's very personal. And pay attention to what works for you. What changes things for you. I think in some of the later presentations, you're going to be talking about, thinking about career pivots, right? At every pivot point, how does your power shift, change? How do you make adjustments to how you show up with your personal power so that you can continue the track record of success, continue the reputation building that you have had and go where you want to go. As we wrap up, I'd like you to just think about, and this is the last, if you're a note taker and you like to follow the program, this is the last question on the handout. I'd like you to think about the last 56 minutes and what is one action, one insight, one action that you can take, one adjustment that you want to make that strengthens your personal power and helps you get where you want to go? Is it in a meeting tomorrow? Is it in a message you need to send later this week? Is it in some planning that you're doing? Is it an important conversation? Think of a specific situation and one action you can take away from what you've talked about from your colleagues and from what we have discussed and shared on the screen. So I'm going to just hold silence here for about 30, 45 seconds while you write your one action. All right, I'm starting to see the pens slow down, the pages flip over. And with that, I am going to thank you again for your time and attention. It's a tremendous gift that you shared this valuable asset of yours with each other, with me, with the Chicago Network, and I hope you have an excellent finish to the day. If you have questions, I don't want to open it up. I feel like there's potential for there to be dead silence, which would be the worst, and there's potential for there to be too many questions, which would also be unsatisfying. So I'm just going to say, remember what I look like. I'll be around at lunch breaks and during the networking session. But thank you very much, and have a great day.
Well, good morning, everybody. And I want to thank Julie and Susan. What a great way to start off this wonderful agenda that we have for you today. My name is Yanni Choi Gordon, and I have the pleasure of introducing our next speakers on the next topic. But before I begin, I want to ask the room, do you guys remember your first job? Yeah? And do you remember, can you think about some of the things you learned in that first job that you use today and that helped you today? So I want you to think about that today, because we all have a journey and we all have our own stories. So Nerissa Brown's career foundation began as a teenager in a bank mailroom in Jamaica. That sounds neat. More than just delivering mail, this role provided her first glimpse into the world of accounting and finance. And she handled crucial tasks like reconciling prepaid postage stamps, knowledge that directly benefited her accounting studies, and managing credit card imprints. If you maybe remember what those are, there were imprints long time ago. And that gave her invaluable insight into the back-end processes of the credit card system. And so, but above all, she learned the importance of careful stewardship of resources and documents, a principle that has remained central to her professional life today. So thanks for sharing that, Nerissa. Ari's journey from coding in Java and SQL at Oracle to her current role in research and teaching is a testament to embracing unexpected opportunities. While initially captivated by the puzzle-solving nature of programming, she discovered her true passion lied in the collaboration, problem-solving, and empowering others through teaching. So this realization led her through diverse roles, from technology consultant in London to a startup project manager in Dubai. And the most important lesson Ari learned was the power of saying yes to serendipitous opportunities, a philosophy that has guided her toward a fulfilling career where she excels at both research and mentorship. So thanks for sharing that, Ari. But artificial intelligence, as you guys all know, is no longer a futuristic concept. I mean, it is present-day reality today. It is reshaping all of our industries, how we do our work, and really creating unprecedented possibilities. So I am so excited to have these distinguished speakers today to talk about and share their wealth of knowledge coming both from the academic and practical realms. And please join me in welcoming Nerissa and Ari.
For that awesome introduction. I'm Nerissa Brown. I'm the Executive Associate Dean of Academic Programs at the Geese College of Business and also a professor of accountancy. I am also, you would say, in my own personal AI journey and also my own professional AI journey. And so I'm really pleased to speak with you today. I know there are some members from Geese and Illinois alums in the room, so I gotta say ILL. So I'll turn it over to Ari to just talk a little bit about her title, and she is the AI expert here in the room because her research ties to AI.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here. My name's Aravinda Garimella, I also go by Ari. I'm an assistant professor at the Geese College of Business, and my research is on human-AI interaction, specifically AI augmentation, how to marry the strengths of human intelligence and artificial intelligence. I also have a focus on responsible AI, which is how to deploy AI in an ethical manner that minimizes harms to society and maximizes gains. It's such a pleasure to be here with Nerissa and with all of you.
Okay, so for today's talk, we're going to talk about AI. We're going to define what AI is. We're going to talk about the opportunities and challenges with respect to AI, but the center of our discussion is going to be focused on opportunities and how you can strategically leverage AI for your own self and also for the teams that many of you might be leading in your own organization. For me, as Executive Associate Dean at the DeBiase College, I lead several teams, all in. It's close to 100 staff members. And 2 of those teams are very focused on innovation and using AI. And when I talk about some of the strategies and opportunities that I will share from my side of the shop, I will share how our staff within Geese are playing around and using AI and some of the steps that they're taking to actually become AI fluid. Now, to get the discussion started, of course, we're a professor, so we're going to ask you a multiple choice question. So the first question, or we only have one poll question in this talk, if Gen AI disappeared tomorrow, how much would it shake up your lives? A lot. I can't imagine working without it. B, some, I'd miss it, but I'd adjust. C, not much, I'm still experimenting. Or D, not at all, I don't use it yet. So if you could answer that poll question so we could get a sense of in the room where everyone is with respect to their journey regarding AI. Okay, Ari, some good responses. We have quite a few power users in the room, I would say. Okay, so just adding up the numbers, roughly 72% you would say are power users, or you are using it to the extent that, okay, even if you lose it, you could adjust, but you are using it to I would say, a medium level extent. We have about 7% that are still not yet on the AI bus. In this talk, we're going to try to convince you on why it would be helpful to get on the AI bus and things that you should not be afraid of. Now I'm going to turn it over to you. I don't know if there are any mics in the room, but I'd love for at least 1 or 2 individuals to just share with everyone here this morning. How are you using generative AI? And it's fine to share examples that are tied to personal use or even professional use. For example, I've used ChatGPT to do travel itineraries. I've used it to calculate what time I need to leave my house, which we're on Central Time, to get to the airport in Indy, which is on Eastern Time. So I've just used it for some fundamental tasks like that, and I'm also using it in my professional life. So do I have any volunteers? Can someone just jump up? Yep.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Morning. Yeah.
I use it very minimally, but at work, I've used Copilot, we're a Microsoft company, to help create job descriptions as a starting point. But the most fun I've had with it is creating fun out-of-office messages. So if you haven't done that, it's really fun, and people will ask you whatever you've been doing. Try it.
Okay, awesome. I also use it quite a bit to write JDs. Amy, in the front?
I think someone there has a mic.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Casey Knapp. I'm a partner at a law firm. We have just recently started using Gen AI a ton. We started with Copilot, and we are starting to use some of the specific legal tech software. And basically, it does the job of a new first-year associate for us, and so it's making us much more efficient for our clients, which they appreciate, but it's also forcing us to have to think more creatively about how we can continue to help associates develop if we're going to use Gen I to do a lot of what they would have done before.
Okay, one more.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm from Naperville, but I do work at a software company in the technology space. So we are using, within our company, we are using a number of different coding companions. Codex, which is part of ChatGPT, but the enterprise version, so we're not training anyone else's models. Also, we're using Claude Code, and we're using GitHub Copilot, which is different than Microsoft Copilot as a coding companion. So personally, I use a lot more on the operations side of technology, job descriptions, data reconciliation, churning out tons of documentation, training materials. I could go on and on, but I was one of the people who wouldn't want to do my work without it. So thank you.
Awesome. Now, the tasks that, the 3 volunteers shared, you can think of tasks that are fairly routine, that maybe if you think 20 years ago, those tasks were already disrupted by technology. Now, the next question is, if let's say you're a part of the 7% or you're not there yet with respect to AI, don't want to call anyone out, but is there any volunteers to just talk, who would want to share what is constraining you, what is holding you back from actually using AI? Yes?
Erica Hudson. Probably because I feel I'm still effective. It's not like impacting my day-to-day, which will be interesting because I'll tell you I work in finance. So as I'm talking to the finance professor, I'm sure you're going to school me today on how I can improve. But I just don't see it as something that I need, at least on the professional side, as much.
Okay. On the strategy side, when we get to that, I'm very curious, if your company does provide you with an AI tool, how many of you can say that your company has provided you with trainings to actually leverage the tool?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
Can I add something to that? Yeah. So I work in the court system, and we've gotten a lot of instruction, with Cook County government, but one of the big issues is security regarding the information that is contained in court files and the use of AI. But we really see there'll be an incredible benefit of using it, but we're balancing that with security. So that's one of the challenges that we have right now.
Okay, awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ari to really just talk about really what is generative AI, the history behind generative AI, and we'll then move into talking about opportunities and the challenges, and then some of the strategies. One of the huge strategies that I want everyone in this room to advocate for within your own companies is training to make you AI fluent and to encourage you to actually use the tool. But with that, I'll turn it over to Ari.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me in the back there, or should I use more of my teacher voice? Yeah? Okay, all right, cool. Such a pleasure to be here among this group of accomplished women. To start it off, as Nerissa said, we'll just set up what we're talking about, the scope of what we're talking about when we say generative AI, so that we can scope out this conversation, right? And judging from the audience, many of you are familiar with this, but I will not be afraid to get a little technical with this audience. I feel like I don't need to worry about that, right? So, a very intuitive definition of AI. I'm from a computer science background, so if you go to comp science degree, they'll give you a very technical definition of what is AI and what's not. But what I find is a more useful definition, which is the ability of a machine to perform cognitive functions that we typically associate with human minds, right? This goes into things like problem solving, prediction, but recently, even things like creativity, right? And even reasoning with the latest models, right? AI is not new, right? We just have all the buzz right now, but that's a timeline of AI. I will not get into all of that. One sec. Is there a laser here? I'm not sure, but If you start here, like Alan Turing, another thing that issue when you get a computer science degree in 1950 came up with the Turing test. What is the Turing test? In simple words, the philosophy behind a Turing test is if an AI can make a human think it's human, that's intelligent, right? So in the Turing test, you have a human in one room, you have a computer in another room, and there's a human tester outside, right? And the human tester is chatting with both of these, text chatting. If the human tester outside cannot tell which room has the human and which room has the AI, that computer, that machine is said to have passed the Turing test. This happened when? 1950. So what we are experiencing today, the revolution, it started decades ago, right? And then a lot of things happen, right? Let's just jump over to let's talk about ELIZA, 1964. In MIT, Joseph Weizenbaum created ELIZA, the first chatbot. And a big moment of mind-blowing moment for him was he was having people come in and test the chatbot just to see if it works well. And at one point, one user asked Joseph, could you just leave the room? I want to talk to the chatbot in private. That's when Joseph was like, okay, this is something's happening here that we need to pay attention to, right? And then in 1997, AI beat humans in chess for the first time. Right? That's back in 1997. That feels like ages ago, right? Then we have the Roomba in 2002, Siri in 2011, and in 2014, Eugene, a chatbot, actually passed the Turing test that I spoke about. Right? 2/3 of the audience said that that's a human, right? And then finally in 2017, Go, which is way, way, way more complex than chess, AI defeated humans on Go as well. And all of this is before the 2020s happened with the generative AI explosion. So what's new there, right? In simple words, I know the diagram looks, there's a lot going on with the technology behind generative AI, but if you have to explain it in simple words, they are powered by large language models, which this may be basics to many of you, but I still want to cover the basis here, right? They're powered by large language models, which have neural networks in them. So each of these are layers. And they are provided with a lot of training documents, from the internet, right? So billions of sentences. The latest open AI, GPT-4, let's take GPT-4, was trained on 1 trillion tokens. Token is think of it like words from the internet, right? And then based on what large language models do is, based on their entire training data set, they generate predictive sentences which are grammatically correct and semantically similar to what they find on the internet. That's what they're doing. They don't really reason. Makes sense? They don't really reason. It's predictive. It's predictive text generation, right? So that's what generative AI really is in a nutshell. And of course, on top of this, then there's a lot of things. You first do this training, then you do something called reinforcement learning, where you fine-tune the model. And on top of that, we'll talk about this a little later, you can do things like RAGs for some reasons, right? Okay, so coming to the opportunities for all the leaders in the room, right, with generative AI, with that quick primer. If you think of the 1990s, where the internet boom happened, everybody was like, let's make a website, right? To talk to our consumers. 2010s, everyone's like, let's make an app to interact with our consumers. And now, in the 2020s, let's make an AI agent, right? KPMG did a survey recently, and it turns out 90% of their clients are either already implementing AI agents or thinking of doing that in the very near future. So this is not some fringe excitement anymore. It's very much mainstream. So what is an AI agent? Because we will be talking about the opportunities and challenges in a minute. So I want to lay out what we mean by an AI agent. How is that different from just an AI algorithm versus what they call agentic AI, right? So an AI algorithm is just that. It's an algorithm, right, that can do something. But an AI agent, think of it as an entire system that can act autonomously. Right? So now in financial services and healthcare, retail, technology, and so many other industries, right? Banking, government, and so many technologies, you have, in the past, if you had a chatbot, it could just, in retail, let's say, right? It could just give you some response on one product, right? Or you could ask a specific question, you get an answer. But now an AI agent can get your order, place the order, right? See it through the entire purchase process, make sure, track its delivery, the entire 9 yards, right? That's what an AI agent is. Now, AI agents come in many shapes and forms. You could do an entire session just on that, right? There could be conversational agents, there could be coding agents, right? There could be, there are so many types of agents, right? And analytics agents, so many types of agents. KPMG came up with, today I'm talking about KPMG twice. It's not like I actually used to work for Ernst & Young, so it sounds like I'm promoting KPMG or something. But they do have this framework good, actually. They came up with something that's intuitive. It's called the TACO framework of like classifying AI agents. They are taskers, automators, collaborators, and orchestrators. Orchestrators are for anybody in the room by any chance using multi-agent frameworks at this point. I'm not sure. We'll talk about that in a minute. But orchestrators is like there's a supervisor AI and many minion AIs under it, and it can orchestrate a task end to end by giving tasks to these mini AIs and then, So there are so many types of AI agents. So this is a revolution in that a lot is changing at this time, right? And there's a lot to be aware of in terms of both opportunities for leaders right now for growth, but in terms of the challenges and how to mitigate those, so that this period of growth doesn't come with any steps that you cannot take back, right? But you fully leverage. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nerissa to speak about some of the opportunities and challenges.
Thanks, Ari. Some of the strengths of generative AI that I'm going to touch on ties into what Ari just talked about related to AI agents. I know within Geese, within our own workflows, that's kind of the next level that we need to get to build AI agents that can autonomously do some of the work that we want to offload off or take off our plates so that we can think about things more strategically. With respect to autonomy, 2 weeks ago, I was actually talking with one of our alums who's a partner at PwC. He was talking about how within PwC, they have AI agents that if you're working on reviewing a contract, an agent will pop up and say, hey, I see you're working on a contract. Do you want me to pull some of the details out of the contract for you and put it into maybe a separate document or a spreadsheet? He actually said that he's like, nah, I don't trust the AI agent. And so even though those things are available within the firm, the staff, the employees are not yet trusting of it. They're still wanting to do things a little bit more manual. But I'll get to that as a challenge. With generative AI or an AI agent, you can personalize a GPT. And this is great because I do that when I'm using a GPT model to help me with certain tasks. And so as you're using a GPT, always just go into the back end and in the settings, for example, ChatGPT, you can go into the settings and share information about yourself, your role, the tone that you like to use, and it will learn. It will train itself based on what you're also feeding into it, but also what you're telling it with respect to your style. So I tend to write with a warm, fun tone, and so if I have something that needs to be edited, and I will tell the GPT, like, put it in my tone, and I don't have to explain what my tone is. It will come back, whatever text is written, whether it's for an email or some announcement, it will have my tone. It also knows my role. And so because my role is in higher ed, I even sometimes without even writing a full prompt, it will know where I'm heading. But that comes with using the GPT over time, but then also in the settings, personalizing the back end as well. The nice thing about generative AI is it's scalable. So it can help you to process tasks at scale. And in mass, that would take a lot of human hours to do either manually or semi-manually. So for example, one of our teams within Geese have been looking at using generative AI for compliance with respect to the Department of Justice new accessibility rules with respect to our videos and our instructional content. And so we have, hundreds of videos, and so it's hard to have a human just like review all of those videos and make sure that they're accessible, but you can use an AI tool to actually do that work in an automated way and spit out what are some things those videos are not in compliance with. So those are some things as an example that we're using it at scale. We're also using generative AI at scale with respect to content development from a higher education standpoint. How can we speed up the development of videos for or learners? And so within your own companies, if your company does learning and development and do their own training videos, you can use AI, you can use digital avatars, which is what we're using to solve that problem or speed things up and do so at scale. In the back, I see the dean of our college, Brooke Elliott, who has a digital avatar of herself, and she used it to share our Christmas message in a fun way, but it's something that she didn't have to go into the studio to film. And so, we're using it in that way to just kind of speed up our work. You can use generative AI to be creative. The nice thing about generative AI is you can share with it a problem that you're trying to solve or something that you're trying to ideate on, and ask it to generate 100 ideas. And then out of the 100 ideas, you can pick your top 10 and share with it, these are my top 10 ideas, go at it again. And so from a creative standpoint, you could use generative AI to create tournaments with itself. And in those tournaments, that is where you can use generative AI to come up with creative ideas, send back those top 10 and say, hey, give me 20 more. These are the 10 that I really liked. I've actually tried that from a research standpoint. I was like, okay, this is my research area. I'm trying to come up with some new cool ideas within this research area. I'm interested in looking at this particular outcome. I was like, go read the literature, do some deep reading of the literature related to this, and come back with some ideas. And I told it to come back with 20 ideas. And the 20 ideas it actually came back with was actually like really good. Some were already done, but there were a couple that were not yet done, but to actually do those research ideas, they're pretty complex, but I was like, oh, this is like really, really spot on. The other really huge benefit or strength of using generative AI is problem solving. And when I heard a little bit about your own uses of AI from the volunteers, it really in many cases boils down to solving a problem or thinking about a work task that you would probably rather get off your plate. It's not a problem, but it's something that you want to be more efficient at. So for example, writing job descriptions. It's something that, yes, we can sit down and do, but it's probably going to take us 2 to 3 hours. You can scope out the role, and then just get some ideas on bullet points that you need to have in that job description. The example that I shared with respect to accessibility and being compliant with DOJ rules through Title II, it's a compliance problem that we're trying to solve, and we're trying to do it in a very fast way because we have to be compliant by the middle of 2026. And so it's a problem that our team is trying to use generative AI to solve that efficiently, but also at scale. Let me touch on some of the challenges of generative AI, and then I'll turn it over to Ari to just talk about the responsible use of AI. Our slides just skipped.
Should we press red to go back again? Oh.
Okay. Some of our slides are a little bit missing after challenges, but I think I remember what we were talking about, what we were supposed to talk about. The good thing is I have my phone and the slides on my phone. So with respect to challenges, and this is something that you'll see if you're using a GPT, either personally or professionally. Sometimes it can hallucinate. And as Ari shared, it's a model that's probabilistic. And so you can have two individuals asking the same question, but the outcomes can be different because it's a model that is trying to predict and come up with answers based on that prediction. So you can have multiple answers from a GPT for the same question or the same problem. Control. Sometimes you'll feel that you are losing control of a task or a scenario, particularly when you're using, let's say, an AI agent. The example that I shared from our PwC alum is one such example, where staff feel like they would lose control of the task if they rely fully on an AI agent. Safety and security is also a challenge, especially when you're using GPTs that don't have a firewall or GPTs that are not locked down from an enterprise perspective. And so there's always questions on, okay, well, what is being shared outside or into the model, because whatever you share potentially could be used by others. And lastly, trust. With any technological tool, you always will have to trust the tool and trust that the tool will generate the outcomes that you are looking for. But with generative AI, it's a whole different level of trust, and it's because it's a probabilistic model where even for us, we're using it, but many of us, we don't understand even the back end of the tool. And so just being able to trust AI is one of the challenges. Now I'll turn it over to Ari to talk about responsible AI principles.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Professors have to do this sometimes. Stuff goes wrong, slides don't show up, memory. So to continue on some of the challenges that Nerissa spoke about, let's address those with the responsible AI framework, right? So the responsible AI framework is just a set of principles. It's not quite enough for an organization to take that and run with it, because everything has to be personalized to your context, to your domain, right? But there are some nonprofits, actually there's one in Chicago working on this AI 2030 where I serve on their board of advisors as well. They're trying to take responsible AI principles and customize it to different domains, like healthcare, finance, and things like that. And every leader needs to go through this exercise is what I would say, right? What responsible AI means for education is very different from what it means to, let's say, banking, right? So the key principles of responsible AI are accountability, transparency, human oversight, civic mindedness, and some others, right? But I'll touch upon some of the most important ones. Accountability. When you have these autonomous systems, who is accountable when something goes wrong? That has to be clearly established. And that's difficult because everyone likes to pass the buck, right? And before we were passing the buck to people, and now there's a machine we can pass the buck to. It gets more challenging, right? So accountability is very important. And it's wonderful, may I say, to see so many women leaders here. Accountability in AI is not just about technology, it's about so much more, you know? It requires an ethics perspective, it requires a philosophy perspective too, right? It needs sociology, it needs an economics understanding, it needs this interdisciplinary thinking, right? Okay, so going back to accountability, what can we do for some of the problems like the hallucination problems that Nerissa spoke about, right? Because AI systems do hallucinate. That LLM picture I showed you before, I said it produces sentences that are grammatically correct and semantically most similar to what's on the internet. Do you remember this time when Google's Bard said something like Barack Obama was the first Muslim president and the stock value of Google dropped by I don't know how many million or something in one day? Why did it do that? Because there was a book title with that name, but that book title was talking about the rhetoric that was around and was going to address that rhetoric, but that was the book title, so it just said that, right? Now, there can be a lot of very significant downstream consequences if AI chatbots do that, right? So there are ways to mitigate this, but not completely eliminate it just yet. So the ways to mitigate it are something called RAG system, which you can deploy on top of, those who are in the coding realm know what RAG does. It's like you take an LLM and you put an additional layer on it to give it a specific database or sources to refer from of information. It could be your company's corpus, right? We were talking about some lawyers in the room, some courtroom things earlier too. There was a case, actually, LLMs regularly refer to legal cases that don't exist, right? Something versus something, and that's not even a real thing. So you can give it the library of real cases, for example, right? So RAG does that. But there's more to it than just using. RAG reduces hallucination problems, but there are still things you need. So coming to the second principle of responsible AI, human oversight. There are really 3 ways to integrate human into the AI agent systems, right? Human out of the loop, generally a bad idea. Unless it's something very routine, human being out of the loop, my take is that for the most part, it's not the best, right? I know we want autonomy, I know we want efficiency, but we have to think at what cost, right? Then there's human over the loop. Human over the loop means AI is doing everything, but there'll be a human who checks it, okay? So in the airlines, right, when the pilots drive, these days, pilots fly a pilot, pilots fly a plane. These days, they don't really need to do anything. They're not holding, there's like a system that's doing everything. But there's terminology that says, take a look out the window once in a while, right? Like, just check what's going on. So human over the loop means take a look out the window once in a while. Just see how your system's working. Don't just let it do its thing for years, right? And human in the loop is every now and then you're coming in, giving it feedback, improving it continuously, iteratively, which of course, whenever you can afford it, that is the best practice, really. So human oversight, civic mindedness, how is this generative AI revolution affecting society at large, right? I come from education, so I speak to students every day. There is a sense of, disheartenment in some students because there's a lot of word right now about AI taking junior level jobs, right? Like what I was hearing earlier about the legal, that's like a paralegal's job maybe, right? Or an entry level associate. But as someone who worked in consulting, both as a technical consultant and as a business analyst, both on the business side and the technical, I can tell you that the managers who are respected the most are people who have both technical and domain functional knowledge and internal company knowledge. So if you want to create those people, you have to start from the beginning. You can't get them in laterally, right? You need to bring them in and train them so they understand the company's internal knowledge and grow within the company. So just something to think about as an educator. I have to put that plug for my students, right? Yeah. So these are the, the slides came back. Yes. What happened? Okay, look at this cool animation stuff. Okay, all right. all right. So with that, and inclusion, absolutely, that's another thing. Like, who is your thing working for, right? Let's say if you're using AI for fashion, what is it when you see when you say like rich people fashion, what is it showing? Which demographic is it showing, right? Are all demographics represented? In that, inclusion is like important. You have to think about what these things mean in your domain, right? And yeah, bias awareness. I actually have research in this where I show that when humans are exposed to AI inputs before they're allowed to make their own prediction, how they are biased by AI outputs, right? So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nerissa for the most fun part of the presentation, strategies.
So I'm going to talk about some strategies with respect to leveraging AI from a leadership professional standpoint. And many of the examples that I'll share is from a higher education context, but it still relies on professional work. It still relies on leading teams and getting teams to be encouraged to use AI and think about the work problems that they're trying to solve. Now, the first thing in using AI in a corporate setting or within a professional setting is making sure that you secure employee buy-in pretty early. One example that I'll share is, at the university, we were given Microsoft Copilot. Many of us were given Microsoft Copilot within our teams. And we were given a little bit of training here or there. And we were just told, have at it, go use it. I would say many of us actually did not use it or even try to use it. Many of us actually tried to turn it off if it popped up. But data actually shows that within organizations, organizations that actually just provide either Copilot or another form of GPT without actually getting employee buy-in or providing training, 30 to 60% of the employees actually are not using the tool or not using the licenses provided. So if within your organization, within your teams, you're going to invest in AI, you need to get employee buy-in to just make sure that the returns, you can generate returns from that investment. Especially if you're using an AI tool that has a firewall that is an enterprise version, there is a cost to it, and they're very costly. And so don't just think you're just going to invest in an AI tool, unleash it on your team, and expect that they will use it. So there is buy-in, and then going back to what Ari shared about the need to develop trust with respect to the tool. And you can only gain trust by investing in making sure that your teams are AI literate or AI fluent, meaning that they have a basic understanding of what an AI tool does. They don't need to know the coding behind it, but they should have an understanding of how it works in a very simple way, which is kind of what we've provided today in the front end of our discussion. But members on your team and even yourselves, you should be thinking about having what is called AIQ, a basic sense of what AI does, but also be fluent in what it can do, what it can help you achieve. And the only way to get to this is making sure that there's actually systematic support and training within your companies and within your teams. And so if that doesn't exist currently, please go back and advocate to your leaders to have individuals come in and provide training for your teams. And that is what we have done within our college. We have a team that will go around to different subunits and actually provide training on how to write a prompt. If we do want to build an agentic AI, an AI agent, we can actually use that team to look at our workflows and think about, okay, how can we use an AI agent to solve that? And that team is actually also going across campus, presenting to other teams to get them to be AI fluent or literate as well. Another thing for us in the higher education industry is making sure that our students, the individuals that your companies do employ, are coming out with a certain level of AI fluency, and that is the next thing that we are working on. This current generation that is, leaving or undergrad, they are way more fluent than us just because they're using it a lot in their own personal lives. But to make sure that they're fluent in knowing how to apply AI to corporate settings and to solve corporate problems. So for example, in an accounting or finance class, how can you leverage AI to tackle some general tasks and functions within an accounting and finance context? The other thing is making sure that within your own teams, making sure that you actually try to curate some artifacts that people can rely on. So this is the next step with respect to being AI fluent and literate. I do have, you would say, a training manual that I go back to quite a bit That training manual was provided by the team that works with our subunits. And it has examples, examples of prompts, and it trains us on how to actually write a prompt. What you get out of AI is dependent on what you put in, and so you have to make sure that you're writing your prompts in a clear way. This is an example of a prompt template from our AI training documents, and it's something that I rely on very frequently. And the prompt template will tell you that when you're writing a prompt, you have to give the AI or tell the AI what is a task that you're asking it to do. It's always good to give an example just to kind of make sure it hits its mark. You have to tell the GPT the context. For example, I always, even though it's trained on the fact that I'm in higher ed, sometimes I will have to remind or share, like, this is what I'm writing this because I'm doing X. You know, if it's, let's say, a speech or whatever, you have to share the context. You have to share the format as well. Is it an email? Is it a full-fledged document with bullet points, etc.? And share your persona. It learns your persona over time, and it also learns your tone over time. And sometimes your tone will need to change depending on the context. And so if I'm writing an email to my staff, and I just want some ideas on what to share, or even to just use ChatGPT to check the email, make sure that it's grammatically correct and it's hitting the mark with respect to what I want to share. I can just make sure that it's checking the tone to make sure that the tone is, when I write emails, I want them to be a warm and friendly tone versus something that's maybe a research paper. The tone has to be academic style. But this is just an example of how to use a prompt template. Also, one of the strategies is, you know, for your own professional lives, and when you're thinking about your teams, with respect to integrating AI, it's always good to start first with what is a problem that we're trying to solve, what is a task that we're trying to get more efficient at. And actually starting from the bottom up with respect to integrating AI in your workflows. The graphic that I have here is an example from one of our teams within the college where they actually did a Summer of AI challenge. And another team is actually doing a Fall of AI challenge. But the challenge is not to actually build an agentic AI tool, but actually to work with the team and have them think about, okay, what are some workflows that we have that are either complex or either very time consuming? What are some workflows that could benefit from using an AI tool? And even if they don't come up with a solution related to what the AI tool would look like, it gives them the opportunity to think about, okay, what is a problem that we're trying to solve? And then if there's expertise on the team to figure out how to use AI, great. But the next step for that team is actually then bringing in someone who is trained on AI and building an AI agent to then solve that problem. But you can't use AI to solve problems before actually stripping down the problem and knowing what are the solutions that you want to get out of using an AI tool. Another thing that I'll touch on is making sure that career paths and particularly job descriptions actually reflect AI skills. A lot of the job postings that you will see right now, especially at senior or mid-career levels, are putting in AI skills, and not only AI skills, but other tech-related skills. And that is actually being done intentionally to make sure that individuals can actually see that the use of AI has meaning for them with respect to that next step from a career standpoint. So within your teams, one way to encourage your staff to actually embrace AI and use AI is to look at their job descriptions and even figure out how you can incorporate the use of AI in some of the bullet points in their job descriptions, so that they understand that, oh, if I actually learn how to use AI and build AI into my work, then this is what it means for me from a performance standpoint and from a career standpoint. But it's doing it in a way that it's not making them fearful of, oh my gosh, AI is going to take over my role. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to make sure that your job descriptions and the career and promotional paths that you build for your staff members and individuals on your team reflects AI, so that it gives them a incentive to actually embrace the tool. The other thing is to make sure that you're showcasing success stories. So remember the first poll that we did, we had maybe about 49% of everyone here in the room sharing that they can't do without AI. So there are a lot of power users here in the room. So going back to your own companies, going back to your own teams, if you are a power user, actually sharing that to your team is super helpful, because it demonstrates how someone else can actually leverage AI. I've learned a lot from my leaders and my own staff members that are using AI, and they're like, Nerissa, this is what I'm using it for. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, if you're using it and getting good outcomes, then I shouldn't be fearful about using it. So really making sure that you're sharing your own stories within your teams and in your corporations of how you're using AI. And if someone has really done a good job, really showcase that, again, to leverage employees and your staff to leverage AI. Now with that, we have about roughly 9-10 minutes that we will open the floor for questions. There is a QR code that I have here. You can disregard the little dinosaur. But if you click on the QR code, it will take you to an open content course that we offer at Geese through Coursera. It's called AI in Business. It will actually go through the fundamentals of AI. In that course, it's taught by one of our key professors in the AI and technology space. In that course, as an open course, it will actually have assignments for you to do, little ways to get you to play around with AI in the context of learning about AI at the same time. So there are 2 MOOCs, which is open content videos. There's one which just teaches you and introduces you to AI and the fundamentals, and then the next MOOC is an advanced part of the course. So please check that out when you have a chance. So with that, Ari and I are happy to take any questions. If we can't answer, like professors, we'll write them down and make sure we get back to you. Yes?
There's someone over there too.
Can I go? Go ahead. Okay. Hi, Kristen Lane with the Golden Apple Foundation. We work with teachers, and particularly with AI, we show them AI tools to use in the classroom so that they're more efficient. And we also work with pre-service teachers, so undergraduates, some of your students, and one of their biggest concerns is environmental issues. Mm-hmm. How do you respond to that when that's brought up?
Yeah.
Okay. Ari, do you want to
take
that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I'm so glad someone brought this up, and if that responsible AI slide hadn't done that on me, I was going to address that. This is one of the very important issues that is talked about less, and we already have examples showing that if someone takes this seriously, the environmental cost can be mitigated. So we need more leadership of that, if I may go ahead and say, in the US particularly. So if you look at OpenAI versus DeepSeek, how much the DeepSeek's training is so much more efficient, right? It's able to use way few more tokens and cost a lot more environmentally than OpenAI is. And it can do, I would say, 90% of the job at 10% of the cost. And these statistics are from a few months ago, right? It also depends on the job. Like if it's coding, actually, it's exactly on par with OpenAI, right? There are some other reasoning tasks that it's at 90%. So we need more leadership to take this very seriously, and maybe incentives also. You know, I don't know if there's anyone from like the government side in the room, but like public policy, we need incentives for people in technology to focus on the environmental costs, right? If you can get 95% of the work done, which already these models are doing way more than any of us know how to leverage, right? We are leveraging so little of their power anyway, but if that can be done with so little environmental cost, which all comes down to where's the most of the cost coming from, just breaking down to fundamentals, it's the electricity, because that uses coal and other non-renewable resources, right? And why is and the number of chips. So why is the electricity cost that much? Because it takes that much effort to train these models, right? Based on how many tokens they are using. So we already have industry examples where people are competing on this front, and I think that should serve as an inspiration for all new, both creators of these models, right? Like people on the forefront, people like Anthropic, people like OpenAI and things like that. But also when we make choices about which ones to deploy, which ones to use, we can also put a little bit of thought into that, right? I have Perplexity. In Perplexity, you can choose like different models. Sometimes I run different models and see how different really is the output. It's not that different, right? But I also do that sometimes to get the best of all, right? I'm trying to do the creativity thing that Nerissa is talking about. Let's say I'm sourcing ideas. So in Perplexity, there's just a drop down where you can be like GPT-4 or the other models, Copilot or whatever, right? And then I compare their responses sometimes. And you'll be surprised that you can get a lot done with almost all the models. So both in the development, sorry, who was it who asked the question? Thank you so much for bringing this up. I really appreciate it, something I should have touched upon. Both in the development of these models and in the deployment, I think we need leadership that's just more aware and thinking about this, because it is not a non-trivial cost. Thank you.
In the back?
And also there, somebody's waiting.
Yeah.
Charlotte Sun from State Street Investment Management. As a quant researcher, one of the areas that takes a lot of time from us is the literature survey. I guess that's not new to you guys as well as professors. So one of the challenges I noticed is the AI could tell me things not only inaccurate, but also they could make up papers written by who and who with findings XYZ, which was totally not there. So which deterred me of using it. So my question is expertly in this area. So what kind of tips or strategies you guys could advise me with mitigating the hallucination risk, either in this area or like iterative interactions with AI, some strategies with that?
I'll share a little bit on how we're working with students to make sure that either from a research perspective or if they're using it in assignments, I think of the rule of, and this is if you're an accountant or auditor, trust but verify. Whatever output that you're getting from AI, you can't just holistically trust it. And so you have to go in and actually check the sources. It still means adding the human side on the back end to just make sure that whatever is outputted is relatively true or is true. And there is a lot of risks with respect to hallucinations, particularly if you're doing not only quantitative research, but research that ties to, let's say, the medical field, other fields that have very high human risks. Do you want to add anything else?
Yes. And I had a little difficulty listening, but you were talking about research and credibility of like sources and stuff. Yeah. Sure. So for on the research side, the PhD students I work with, I tell them, you cannot outsource literature review. You need to read the papers yourself, right? Yeah, because that's how you get an understanding of the field, right? And these are the things where personally, I rely less on AI. AI is really good for crafting nice narratives, right? But even that, as a writer, I do fiction writing on the side. Never the first draft, right? Yeah, because the quality of your final draft is very much a function of your first draft. So it has to have your ideas, right? Now, there are exceptions. Sometimes, like, people have writer's block, so it's nice with that. I'm not going to say this is like a... So now let's come back to the point of credibility, right? I think with literature review, I'm finding it's not quite there yet. Even models which claim, like, I don't know if you know about Liner. Liner is a GPT that claims to be good at literature review. It is better than ChatGPT, right? It's better, but still sometimes I find at least it finds papers that do exist. So that's improvement, we'll take it. But it's not the best papers for that topic. Like when I do a quick search on Web of Science or Google Scholar, there's so much more important papers it should have considered, which it did not. Which could be for a lot of reasons that's the black box nature of these algorithms. We don't fully understand why they're picking the papers they are, right? So there are some areas. Coming to coding, I teach an SQL coding, SQL coding class to undergrads, right? For many of them, they've never coded before. So I tell them, and I'm always impressed by how much my students are on board with this. I tell them, I will teach you how to use AI in your coding, but just trust me for the first 2 months of the course, don't use AI, right? Okay, no, everybody's not listening to that. They're using AI. I can tell from their assignments, right? There are tells, of course. But I think for the most part, based on how they do on their exams, where they don't have any Gen AI, I think they are following following my cue. So we go back to here, there's also the question of skill attrition, right? I explained to my students about a concept of learning debt. Whatever you don't learn today, you have to spend much more effort learning tomorrow. And strengthening fundamentals is so important when it comes to skill-based things like math, like coding. There's no shortcut to those things, right? So what I do is in the beginning, I teach them don't use coding, don't use Gen AI, and I teach them the fundamentals, get that clear. And then in the end, I actually do a workshop. Last semester, it was really, students enjoyed it, where I give them a problem, big problem with 4 parts that they will look at. It looks like it's like a 1-month project, but I'll say, you're all going to solve this in 1 period, 1 class period, right? And I'm going to tell them each part, I want you to do it using Google Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, OpenAI, and like 4 different ones, and DeepSeek. Like pick your one and do it. So they get to compare and contrast, right? The relational modeling, there's one model that looks so pretty but doesn't make any sense. Oh, okay, maybe this LLM is not the best for creating relational models. Maybe this is. Maybe there's a part of that exercise that's also a marketing pitch. They're like, oh, okay, LLMs are doing very well here. The code generation, some are doing better than others, right? So this kind of awareness, I think, your question, I know, was for maybe not student level, but this can be applied, many of these principles about where to trust LLMs versus be very skeptical, right? That in the back end, it's happening. Companies are already pushing for this, right? All the leaders, Anthropic, OpenAI, that's the game. That's where all the money is. So they're working on that, right? They're working on minimizing hallucinations. They're working on efficiency, right? Things like that. But until then, we have to be very aware users, leverage its strengths, but not give up our human in the loop that we spoke about earlier. Yeah. With even our own training and our employee skill attrition. That's another thing to keep in mind, right? You can have AI do jobs that employees are doing, but you have to think, is that core to their job role or peripheral? If it's peripheral, you're creating efficiencies in the system. If it's core, you're creating 2 problems. One, skill attrition. Over time, they may forget how to do those things. Second, identity issue, because whatever's core to you, you see yourself as that. And then you see yourself as being replaced. So there are all these issues to consider. Thank you.
We'll take one more question.
Yeah, so this is around like this topic here. It's about policing AI. So you've got like treaties for nuclear weapons out there, right? I know they have one in Europe for AI, but the 2 main contenders for AI are obviously US and China. No one's policing anything. And getting to that topic, like, we're going to create, I tell my team, people are going to create futures that may not exist, but because it's published out there, AI is going to interpret it as that fact, right? And so what's published on paper, that may not be fact either. And with reality TV, a lot of social media, and then people progressing not with neutral thought anymore, everything is diverging, and how do you recommend that we handle that? Because I feel like there should be some people out there, consortiums out there, to promote this, because if we don't, it's not going to be very pretty.
Promote what? Sorry, promote.
Like, if we don't promote, like, moral standards around AI.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you asked. That's exactly what I study. Like, that's what I do, because I feel that's the luxury of being in academia, is you don't have to take sides. You can be very objective and engagedly so, right? I do study how humans and AI can collaborate together, but I also study about we need more systems, and there aren't enough. There aren't enough, right? There aren't enough systems to oversee this, but there are people doing really good work. You may want to look up the work of RAI, Responsible AI Institute. They're doing really good work in, sorry, did you? Yeah. No, that's exactly what we're talking about. I think that's what we're addressing. Yes. Yeah. Yes. These are the problems we're talking, and I think that's exactly what I was trying to allude to when I said grammatically correct but semantically similar to what's on the internet, right? I think it's a probabilistic model, and that is what we're talking about. That's my whole research is on just how to create guardrails, because there is enough enthusiasm in the industry for the technology, right? And as a computer scientist, I relate to that. Whenever there's a new technology, you want to think about what all are possible with it, right? But there are people who are working on the ethics side, and there's good research going on there. We need more of it. So I was speaking about the work of Responsible AI Institute, RAI, you might want to look it up. They're giving frameworks for companies to use, right? They're giving roadmaps. They're giving you instructions on how to do red teaming. Red teaming is like creating within your company a malicious actor to make your AI do bad things so that you can find out those problems and fix them internally before they manifest in the real world. So there are frameworks and roadmaps for this, but it's really about how much leadership also has to take initiative on this, right? And some of these things, like the train is in motion, right? It's not up to one or two individuals to say anything about that, or there are much powerful forces in motion, right? But we have to be careful about two things. Are we doing this with fewer harms to society? And there should be a line where there was a time when IBM CEO just backed out of facial recognition because it wasn't doing that well on women of color. So you need to take strong stances as a leader. And I feel like if this group of women cannot, I don't know who will. So I feel optimistic about that. And even when I talk about the challenges with AI, I like to think of it like this is an opportunity to rethink security, privacy, right? Because you have a whole new host of challenges now with AI, right? Inclusion-wise, security-wise. It's possible, many of us feel like this is done and it's in a drawer somewhere. We've handled these things. But AI gives you a chance to revisit this with new enthusiasm and do even better on these fronts, right? So I guess that's my take on it, right? This is exactly why we have conversations around harms around AI, responsible AI frameworks, but the deployment of these frameworks has to be at the organizational level. And there are resources out there for willing leaders.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, we'll wrap up. Thanks for the awesome questions and questions that touch on really complex problems in the AI age. Ari and I were really pleased to invited to present to you all, and really looking forward to interacting with many of you, and enjoy the rest of today's session.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Whoop, I don't get the mic. There we go. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. That was fascinating, and they're going to be here. And I don't know if you guys clicked on this, but it's a free course, and you get a certification too. There's a little bit charge, but this is incredible. So thank you, Dean. Thank you, U of I, for offering this to us. We're going to take a less than 10-minute break because we're going to start promptly for the next session. Equally fascinating. So take a break and then come back, grab a drink, grab a snack, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you have all been having an amazing morning, and I have to say it's wonderful to be here with you. My name's Kathy Shearer, and I am the Chicago office managing partner for Deloitte, and I'm also a proud Chicago Network member. And I have the great privilege to actually introduce our next speakers who are going to be having a conversation around the topic of leading with confidence. And this is a really multi-layered topic. There's so many things that can affect how we present as leaders. Things like our competency, or even how we perceive our competency in the way that we do our jobs. Our passion and our joy for the role. The teams that we're working with, who we're working for, who's working around us, and how that role actually fits into the rest of our lives. And any of these things individually, or certainly in combination, can actually impact the way that we show up and our effectiveness as leaders. Has anyone ever been there before? A couple of you, I've been there. So we're fortunate today that we are actually going to have a conversation about this and get some tips about how we can lead with more confidence. And here with us today, we have in the middle of our panel, the iconic Cheryl Francis. And she is going to be sharing remarks about her career and her life journey. And for those that don't know Cheryl, it is not an exaggeration to say that she is actually a rock star in the Chicago business community and beyond. She has a very interesting and inspiring career journey that took her from finance roles, including being a public company CFO, to serving as an adjunct professor at the University of Chicago. And finally, she's actually serving on 3 significant public company boards. Cheryl is really the embodiment of leading with confidence, and when you hear her story, you're going to appreciate how she used self-awareness and reflection, prudent risk-taking, and a holistic approach to managing her career and life as a formula for her success. And joining her will be Alison Ranney over there. And she's a senior partner from Russell Reynolds who focuses on CEO, board, and C-suite placements. She's an accomplished and respected executive and also a board member. She's made intentional moves in her career that took her from being a corporate lawyer to an executive recruiter. And finally, Suzanne Burns will be leading the conversation. Suzanne is currently a senior partner at Spencer Stewart, where she focuses on placements and advising the C-suite and the boardroom. Suzanne has a really fascinating career journey that has taken her from finance roles to leading business operations to serving as a chief talent officer and finally as an executive recruiter. So I think this is going to be just an amazing conversation. I will end my remarks by saying that I could not be more proud to mention that in addition to all of these women being trailblazers who lead with confidence, all 3 of our speakers are Chicago Network members. So ladies, over to you. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you all of you for being here today and for hosting us for this conversation, which we're very excited to have. And because we needed a guinea pig to start things off, that's me. I'm going to talk you through my career and actually life journey as kind of a case study to give you some ideas about how to make decisions for yourself, to give you some ideas about how to lead confidently and actually very successfully, and then how to also go through the dark times, which I think exist for all of us. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to tell you about Cheryl Francis, for better or for worse. So I'm going to start my story with my undergraduate and graduate school education. I went to Cornell University undergrad and University of Chicago for my MBA, what's now Chicago Booth. And the reason I tell you that is that 3 things happened during that period of time that are impactful as you hear the rest of my story. The first is, when I was at Cornell, I had the opportunity for 2 of those years to be a teaching assistant working for a professor who was just a terrific guy. He kept winning, teaching awards. He was a great boss, and he taught me how to teach. And I had a lot of practice with that. And you'll see that it's coming back later in my story, so just kind of put a little pin on that one. The second thing that happened at Cornell was I met my husband, so that was really important. We got married the week after we graduated from Cornell, so we were just little tiny people at that point in time. And we came to the University of Chicago as a married couple to get our MBAs. Now, I tell you that part of the story because as a married couple of very ambitious and talented people coming to get their MBAs at the University of Chicago, it gave us the opportunity when we graduated to choose a geography, to not just choose a first job out of the program, but to realize that we might have a chance to advance within the companies we joined, but we also wanted the flexibility to move companies without having to uproot the other person. So we chose a geography, we chose Chicago. We've been married 49 and a half years. We've been here 49 and a half years, so you can see that was a pretty good choice. And then the third thing that I wanted to tell you about with Cornell and Booth is that my undergraduate degree at Cornell was kind of a business curriculum, but it was all applications-based. And at Chicago, again, a business curriculum, but more theoretical and conceptually based. And as a result of that, I have very strong underpinnings around economic value creation. Very, very strong. And it's hard for somebody to give me the smoke and mirrors tricks and convince me to do something that really does not make sense. And that has stood me in good stead and obviously made me a pretty good CFO in a public company. So that's the educational background. First job out of Booth, I went to the Harris Bank, now part of BMO, in a small consulting group that took this modern financial theory we were learning down at the University of Chicago and applied it to the issues that were facing the bank's clients. So in that role, I got to see lots of different companies, lots of different challenging problems, and think about the economic and financial consequences in a way that was going to help the client of the bank. It was a great kind of first step out of the business school. But that group ended up in a bit of chaos, we can talk about later if we want, and people were figuring out if they wanted to stay or go, and at that moment in time, I got a call from FMC Corporation. Company you probably haven't heard of. FMC was a diversified conglomerate at the time. We made everything from Bradley fighting vehicles for the Army to citrus juice extractors to nut tree shakers. We mined gold and lithium and potassium and soda ash. We made agricultural chemicals. We harvested seaweed and made carrageenan as a food additive. So it was this crazy group of companies within this larger diversified company, about 40 different businesses. And the top team at FMC at that moment in time was trying to figure out which of these businesses actually are valuable, we should grow, they're going to be good for the future and for our shareholders, which one should we be fixing or exiting. So they were going through a portfolio management exercise. And to help them with that, they used a finance professor from the University of Chicago named Bob Hamada. And Bob had gotten them to a certain point on the theoretical basis of what do we need to do, but now they needed somebody to execute, somebody to come in, do the analytics, collect the information, help them make the decisions. And Bob said, I don't know where she is, but you should go find Cheryl Francis. So that was the call from FMC. And I went to FMC. I ended up spending 16 years there. That was a great role to come in and learn the company, but it wasn't the most consequential role I had at FMC. The most consequential role, and kind of the role you should be thinking about, was the next role, where I was the Director of Investor Relations. Now, why was that such a consequential role? Well, first of all, I was 27 or 28 at the time, so pretty young. But in the Director of Investor Relations role, I became the voice of the investors, a very important constituent group for the company. I understood what they were looking for. I helped get those answers. I became a trusted person within FMC for them, and therefore a trusted voice within FMC to reflect the views of the investors. That was important. Second thing, the regulations were much looser back then, so I was actually able to have a lot of conversations with the investors and answer a lot of questions you probably wouldn't be able to answer today. But in the ability to do that, I had to learn the business, all of those 40 different businesses, and I had to have contacts in each of those businesses that would feed me information. So I developed this strategic network internally that not only helped me understand what was going on, but I knew where to get information so that I could answer the questions the investors had in a truthful and very quick way. So I developed this tremendous network inside the company. That was important. But number 3, and probably most important, every time there was a strategic discussion or decision within the company, I was at the table. At that boardroom, there would be, the CEO, the president, all the C-suite leaders, line of business leaders, and me, 27, 28 years old, because I could speak for the investors. And they were an important ingredient to any strategic choice that the company was going to make. So you can see why it was such a pivotal role. But it wasn't an easy role to get. So let's talk a little bit about that. The role reported to the treasurer, but whenever you're the director of investor relations, you actually work for the CEO, because you're traveling the world with this person, you're talking with the investors with them and with the CFO, and so the CEO had to be very comfortable that I could take on this role and represent the company. The CEO at the time, Bob Malott, had a reputation as being one of the toughest bosses in America, and he was very proud of that. So I knew that this was going to be a very difficult interview. I went into the room. The first thing he said to me was, "I do not want a woman representing this company." But I'd done my homework. I said, "Well, you sit on the board of United Technologies, and they just hired a Wall Street analyst, a woman, for a lot of money, to come in and direct their investor relations effort." And he said, "Oh, yes, and she's doing a good job." So we went on to the next question. He was pretty rude. He did take calls during the interview, and every time he'd hung up, he'd say, "Are we done yet?" And I'd have to say, "No, we really need to talk about this." And we completed the conversation. When I left the room, I had no idea where this was going to end up, but I ended up with the job. And so you can see that was an important conversation for me to have. I'd call it more a negotiation than an interview, but I ended up with the job that really, as I said, was consequential to my career, not only at FMC, but after FMC. Okay, so we go on, other jobs, I won't talk about them, and then all of a sudden, I hit the wall. So what does that mean? So my husband, who I told you was very talented and ambitious and really, really good, was also advancing in his career. So we were each going 180 miles an hour. And I came home from work one day. My sister-in-law had been in town. I had a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. We both did at that point in time. And Vicky's kids were about the same age. So she'd spent the day with them and the caregiver. And when I came home, she sat me down and said, "Cheryl, something is wrong. You cannot have this caregiver with your kids." And we talked about that. I went into FMC the next day, and I quit. So I went from 180 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour, and just needing to sort things out. And the people at FMC were great. They said, "You do need to be home. We understand that, but don't stop talking to us, because we might be able to figure something out. So go home, figure that out, but keep in touch." And I did go home, and after a while, we ended up hiring a young woman who we knew through our church, so we knew her really well. We knew her family well. She was in a community college program. So Nancy would go to school 2 days a week, and she would go to school 2 days a week and take care of the kids 3 days a week, which allowed me then to work 3 days a week and take care of the kids 2 days a week. So that may not sound unusual now. This was 40 plus years ago. There were no part-time jobs. So I talked to FMC. I went back to FMC. What we agreed I would do would be to take on my role as Director of Investor Relations one more time. I did that. I was supported differently. The outside world thought that was fantastic. I was back, and the CEO could not deal with it because I was not available 24/7. So seeing that that was actually not going to work in the long run, I thought, what else can I do with 3 days a week? That'll be challenging, interesting, keep my hand in. I went back down to Chicago booth. Bob Hamada, you remember that name, was now Dean of Curriculum. I said to Bob, "Do you ever have non-PhDs teach in the programs at the University of Chicago?" And he said, "No, this is the University of Chicago. You have to be credentialed to teach here." And he said, except if there's a gap in the curriculum that we don't have anybody on faculty qualified to teach, then we'll bring in an adjunct. So I took the curriculum guide home. I created a course that was definitely a gap, and I was uniquely qualified to teach. I brought it back to him, and he talked about it with the faculty, and I ended up joining the faculty as an adjunct for 3 years, teaching the course that I created. Very fun experience, hanging out with really smart people, and I never lost touch with FMC. So sure enough, Mike, my little one, was now ready to go into kindergarten. I got a call from FMC, and they said, "Cheryl, we think Mike's about ready to go into kindergarten." Yes, that is correct. And we think you should come back. So we've taken the person who's the controller of the company. We're actually giving him an operating job, running one of these crazy little businesses out here. And we'd like you to come back and be our controller and our first woman officer. And I said, "Well, I worked for the controller. I know what that job is. I can't do it. The demands are just too great. It's not something I can do at this moment in my life." They said, oh, we understand. Thanks for thinking about it. And I said, well, thank you for thinking about me. And they went away. A few days later, they came back. And they said, Cheryl, we got a new idea. We're going to take we took the treasurer, and we're making him the controller. So we'd like you to come back and be our treasurer and our first woman officer. And I said, I've worked for the treasurer. I know that job. That's a job I can do. So I went back to FMC as the treasurer, which was a higher level role than I'd left, and it was a great job. 2 years fast forward, I get another call. This call is from R.R. Donnelly. R.R. Donnelly is looking for a CFO. Why are they looking for a CFO? Because if you looked at their financial returns over time, their ROI, return on investment, kept going down and down and down and down. The board and the investors lost patience with that, and they told the management team and the CEO, you need to get a new CFO, because clearly you need some financial discipline and you're not getting it now. And so they decided to have a new CFO. And it just so happened that one of their investors, who owned 10% of the company, was Eugene Vissel. Eugene Vissel also had been an investor in FMC. I knew him because I'd done investor relations multiple times. And moreover, I'd run a project for FMC that made him a whole lot of money that we can go into in the Q&A if you want to. So he was a happy investor in FMC. He was now at Donnelly. He knew that I knew what financial discipline looked like. And he said, I don't care who else you talk to, but make sure you also talk to Cheryl Francis. And wouldn't you know, they were 6 blocks away in downtown Chicago. So I went over to Donnelly, had a conversation with them, we hit it off, and I moved to Donnelly as the CFO. Really, really difficult job. When you think about Donnelly, at the time they were in a printing business, also kind of digital content, but mostly printing. Printing was not yet an anomaly that doesn't exist anymore, but they had huge strategic challenges, some of which they recognized, some of which they did not. So they had a lot of strategic challenges, and they had no financial discipline as had been advertised. So I was there for 5 years, worked for 3 different CEOs, pretty chaotic. I am happy to say we did instill financial discipline in the company, and so that is good. And at one point, 5 years in, I decided I couldn't talk to the investors anymore because I no longer believed that the company with a leadership team in place was going to be able to execute all of these things that we were talking about. So I developed 2 people on my team to be potential successors. One was chosen. I left Donnelly. I didn't go to anything. I just was exhausted, and I left. And it took me 2 years of very dark times, sorting through things. Not that I wasn't busy. I was on corporate boards. You know, I was doing other things. My kids were teenagers. I was able to spend time with them, but it just really threw me off course. It was really, really difficult times for about 2 years. 2 years later, I met Sheila Penrose for breakfast. Some of you know Sheila. So her name hasn't come up yet, but Sheila was the head of the commercial bank for Northern Trust. So she had all the corporate clients. She was my banker when I was a CFO. We did multiple things in the civic community together as well. So we knew that we liked each other. We worked well together. We got things done. We had breakfast because Sheila was leaving Northern Trust. We looked each other in the eye and said, we just spent the last 25 years doing what everybody else wanted. What do we want to do? And we decided to form Corporate Leadership Center, which we did in 2002. The idea behind Corporate Leadership Center is that Sheila and I as board members have to think about succession. We were both successful C-suite executives, and we thought that there were some things that would have been very valuable to us that simply didn't exist, so we created them. So again, we can talk more about this. I'll give you kind of the snapshot version. We do only 2 things at Corporate Leadership Center. First program, CEO Perspectives. There are some people here in the room that went through that. The idea there is you can grow up in an organization in a functional role or lead a piece of the business, but when you get to reporting to the CEO, you have to embrace the agenda of the enterprise. And it's the same, regardless of the company that you're in. We created that program. More than 600 people have been through it now, 60 of whom have become public company CEOs. About a third of the people sit on public company boards, including my alums that are in the room here today. So we are having a real impact on leaders as they're out leading in the world. So that was program number 1. Program number 2, leading women executives. Focused a little deeper in the organization at the inflection point where women move from management to leadership, which is where a lot of corporations lose their female talent. The women either stall out or they leave. I've got some alums of that program in here too. And we work with the women and the company to pull more women through that inflection point into senior leadership. So that's CEO perspectives. So I think I've taken up more than my time, but I did want to close just by saying, I don't know what themes you got from that story, which kind of gets us up to today. But remember, I told you at the beginning to think about your strengths. So I'm going to tell you what I think my strengths are, and you can see if they come from the story or not. The first is that I get things done. And that's actually really important. I can take very complex issues, complex problems, break them down to something simple and move people forward. So that's number one. Number two, my teaching skills, which you could see at a couple of places, particularly at Booth, but actually that was the most important skill I had as a CFO because I had to teach 30,000 people how to make better decisions. So teaching skills, that's something I have. Building strategic relationships, you probably heard that too, very important. Creating options for myself. I don't have 5-year plans. I'm always creating options so that when something faces me, I can make a choice that's going to be a good choice for me. And then lastly, the priority that my family holds in my life that allows me to make some decisions quickly and easily, even though they're tough decisions to make. So I'm going to close there and turn it over to my friends.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you sharing your journey. I'm sure a number of people in the audience can see themselves in your story in some way or shape or form, and also your vulnerability to share that with us. So thank you very much. It's really, really a blessing and a gift. So Alison and I do similar work for a living, and so this is going to be fun. With your recruiter hat on, if you were to hear Cheryl's story, what would you take away about her leadership attributes that you would write down as a note from the interview and say, okay, this is the type of leader that Cheryl is?
Well, it's interesting. I think she kind of did a little bit of my job for me there at the end. We were prepping a few times for this conversation, and first of all, it's such an honor to be here because Cheryl Francis, to me, has always been a rock star. There's women that you look up to who aren't really that much older, but are just on this tear, and you see them around town, and Cheryl has always been that for me. And Suzanne and I, it's funny because people think of us as competitors because we're at these two competing firms, and we're actually really good friends, and so we love doing things like this together, which is really fun. We were talking about on our call about how oftentimes people come to me in my role, and I imagine to Suzanne, to all of us, and say, can you help me plan my career? And what I always will say is that successful careers often make sense in retrospect, and they're not something that you can plan out. And I loved what Cheryl just said about, I don't have a 5-year plan, I create options. And so that's actually something, I think that's a strength of hers, not to get hung up on, is this a logical step, or what, sort of obsessed with the path, because if you go after things that are interesting, that fit where your life is, where you want to go, you're going to have a successful career, right? I also love the way Cheryl just really, in a very pragmatic way, was able to summarize her skills, what she's good at. And that is something that I think is hard for many people, but especially women. And I always say, if you are interested in, sort of selling yourself or taking a new role, or just even being considered within your organization, or joining a board, or whatever it may be, is to really be able to articulate what it is you're good at. That was great to hear who do that, right? And I bet a lot of you were thinking like, yeah, I'm good at that kind of thing too, or here are the kind of things that I could say that I'm good at. And sometimes it's hard to take that step back. I find often that it's people who you work with or people who are close to you who can help you figure out like what you're good at and kind of almost have a working session. Or I really like, there's a assessment tool called the Strengths Finder. It's very basic. You go online, you pay $50, and it tells you there's 32 strengths, and you take it, and it spits back your top strengths or the $50 version. There's a $20 version, do the 50. It takes you all the way through and says, here's what your natural strengths are. And what's wonderful, I think, is it helps you do what Cheryl just did, because it helps you say, yeah, I am good at that. And
it gives you verbiage and confidence, and where this whole conversation is about confidence. And your mother or your spouse or whoever might look at that and be like, well, I could have saved you $50 and told you that. But like, it just gives you that confidence. And then the idea of being able to do what Cheryl did at the end, like, let me tell you what I'm good at. That to me is very powerful as a recruiter.
So I like to call that the sweet spot, which is what you're really good at, what you love to do, and what somebody's willing to pay you for. So professionally, you can think about where those pieces intersect, and that's your power alley. That's a good place to focus.
That's, and on a personal basis, you heard a little bit in my bio, I took twists and turns in my career too to end up doing what I do. And the optionality piece really rings true to me too. 75% of the roles that I've had in my career didn't exist before I was offered them. So, somebody saw something in me or a situation presented itself and they put that map together and said, this is the kind of person we need. Oh, we've got one of those over here. So not holding yourself to a given path because other people tell you that that's the true path. So when I made a pivot to search, everybody kind of scratching their heads like, why would you do that, having run global P&Ls, et cetera. But it was really around some soul searching that I did. Somebody gave me really good advice early on. At any point in transition, they said, with a glass of wine at the beach, wherever you've got some quiet time, write down the 5 things that are going to really make you happy in your next role, and make sure they're both personal and professional in nature. And particularly for women, the personal piece comes into play here too. And I had done that before making this pivot, and I had things like I wanted a global career, I wanted the flexibility to be able to see my daughter who was playing water polo, and go to her games. I wanted to be more entrepreneurial, et cetera. And so it was a mix of the two, and they said, don't make a change until you find an opportunity that satisfies all 5 of those, because then you're going to be back doing it again. And so knowing yourself is a real part of, important part of that journey as well.
I think too, oftentimes, what I'll say, very similar to that, is think about what you love doing and what brings you joy. Don't think about what you're good at. You're going to be good at those things that bring you joy. But if you guys are good at all sorts of different things, but think about what you really like doing and focus on that, because you'll be good at that, and it'll fit those 5.
Right.
If I could just interrupt one more time. So building on something that Alison said, which was that your career makes more sense retrospectively when you look back, I think that you're going to get an exercise. I'm not sure, Kathy, where this is all. Okay, it's coming. Well, you're going to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about it too, but I'll do it quickly because Kathy's going to give you more. But we use this in Leading Women Executives, and that is to map your leadership journey. And that is to understand, take out kind of, the x-axis is time, the y is positive things that happen, negative things that happen, and think about the consequential things in your personal life and professional life, and you map them on that map, and then you tell that story to somebody. And the reason that you do that is it helps you see things that you wouldn't otherwise see, and somebody that is familiar with you but isn't you can see things that you can't see. So there'll be patterns in there that will help you figure out what it is that you're really good at and what you love to do, and what your derailers are, where you get into trouble, which is a useful exercise.
Well, Cheryl, I have a personal theory that men and women define success differently. How have you defined success for yourself during your career journey and your life?
So I don't know that there's a men-women thing, but I do think everybody has their own definition of success, and that's another one of those things that you should think about, right? What is success? Because that's where you're going to be happy.
Right.
So for me, I'd say it's making a positive, sustainable impact. End of story. And that can be translated into my professional life and my civic responsibilities and my personal life. That's what I'm trying to do in this world, make a sustainable, positive impact. And I've also, because of my skill set, think I can do that. I can bring change through education. And that's another theme that you see in the story I told, but also in where I get involved in the not-for-profit community and civic community.
You're very good. So when both of you meet high potential leaders, what do you see that helps you recognize, okay, they can go the distance? What are the attributes that stick out for both of you?
Well, it's interesting because we meet so many different kinds of leaders across our business. I mean, of course, there's functional skills, right? But in many ways, I focus on those less. You know, sometimes you get to a level and you're going to be, you know, it's table stakes that you're going to be really good at your functional area, hopefully. I think, thinking back on some of the themes that Cheryl talked about, someone who can build relationships and who collects people in your own way. It doesn't have to be, like I'm an insatiable people collector, right? That's my personality. But you don't have to, I'm married to someone who collects very selectively. Very selectively, and he's a good balance to me. But I think that, especially in this day and age, the relationships cannot be understated. You know, there's all of this conversation about getting into the office, or, you know, what's it like, can you do your job from home, or, you know, all those conversations, that's a bigger thing. But when you find yourself thinking so much about, am I getting my job done, and am I doing my work? That is such a, I do think that that is often a female thing. Challenge yourself to do that 75% of the time, and then make sure that you're spending 25% of the time. It doesn't have to be on the golf course, right? But it is building relationships, getting out there. You talked so much about the opportunities that came to you because people knew you, and you built those and sustained those relationships. So I do see that as like a characteristic of really successful leaders. Communication skills, that kind of confidence that you see with Cheryl, not cockiness, but that confidence in sort of a sense of yourself, of what you're good at, and sort of what you stand for. And also I think that, I don't know if some of you are parents in this room, but my husband and I talk a lot about how parenting goes in stages, and how you think you really just got it figured out, and then you're like, oh, you know, actually pivot, you know. So I think the idea of, you know, your professional life and your personal life go in phases too, and just always be open to adjusting that, and to saying, is this chapter successful for me now, or is there something that I need to tweak? There's this concept of the balance, right? I just, having, I guess, done that for so many years now, tried to balance. I don't think there's a perfect balance, but it's like watching someone move through their career where they're successfully sort of crafting that chapter and making it work for them. Like, I think those are the marks of successful leaders. So maybe that was a little bit less businessy, Suzanne, but like those are the kinds of things that resonate with me.
We are whole people.
Yes. We are indeed. That's the exciting part. Yeah, I agree with everything. Maybe a couple of things to add, which will not be a surprise. When you're thinking about particularly women or anybody that you're going to think about moving up in the organization to the top, you have to have the enterprise-wide view. You can't be focused in a siloed kind of way. You kind of said that as well. So you have to have that view so you can step into it. The other thing I'd say is I look to people's track records. Who gets things done? And the higher up you go in the organization, you're frequently getting things done through other people. So that's the followership comments that you made as well. But those are the things that I look for, and along with what you said.
So when people are making that transition from a management role to an executive leadership C-suite role, where do you see people struggle, and what would your advice be to help them move through that struggle?
So I can start. So this will be a comment for specifically for women, because it's the things we've learned in leading women executives. And the curriculum for leading women executives is looking at leadership competencies through the lens of being female. And it's actually a little bit different. So I'll give you an example. The higher up you go in an organization, the more important it is that you have good negotiating skills, not negotiating a contract, kind of negotiating the day-to-day, because everything you're involved with is pretty ambiguous. So you have to kind of negotiate to position yourself and your organization in a positive way. I can't conduct that negotiation in the way that my husband can. We'd simply be received differently. But I know that if I conduct that negotiation in a way that puts the company, the organization first, but then links what I need to what's good for the company, my odds of success go up a lot. Zed wouldn't have to do that, but I have to do that. So it's those kinds of things, understanding the leadership competencies, and then how what I have to uniquely do to shift to make myself and my organization most successful.
I would say, as you get more senior, Cheryl's comment about getting good work done through other people, through teams, I think many of us have been successful by doing good work, and you can, that can only take you so far. You also have to delegate and not do it all yourself. That's how you get higher up. So that's where I see people. That's just a very general challenge as you move up, but definitely at that pivotal moment.
And my personal experience, I was in my late 20s, and I had a boss who was probably 25 years older than me, former Marine. And he had a leadership style, and there were no other women around. And I was looking to, okay, what does a leader look like? So I started emulating how he led. Well, that looked really bad on me. And I was quickly told that. So I think finding your own style, your own sense of authenticity, so that you're leading from a place, like you said, that you really know who you are, and you show up in that way, because people can tell if you're faking it, or if it doesn't look genuine. So
that's true.
So Alison, you and I have situations where people will come to us, they've decided, they've maybe been exited out of an organization of their own will or someone else's. They decided to make a transition, and they want a fresh start. What would your advice be in terms of what do they need to have ready to speak to you about to position themselves for that fresh start as a recruiter and make a good first impression?
It doesn't have to be perfect, right? I mean, I think if you're talking to a recruiter and you don't know them, you do want to kind of have your stuff together, but you don't get sort of hung up on having everything have to be perfect. But you do obviously put a really good CV together, make sure that it looks like your LinkedIn, Google yourself. Wow, that's interesting. What's everybody else going to do? They're going to Google you and see what that story is. And think about what these things that we've been talking about in terms of, what are your strengths, what do you want, what are your pillars, and craft your story. Like, many of you are good at marketing, even if you don't have marketing roles in this room. You're good at that because you're at the levels that you are. So take a step back and sort of frame how would you market yourself? How would you sell yourself? And think about telling that story. I can't tell you how often I have the conversation when a candidate will say, I have the perfect answer for when they ask me about X. And I always say, don't wait for them to ask you about X. If there's something that you think is on their mind, something that they don't quite understand, proactively weave that into your story. Take control of it, because if you don't, they, one, might not ask you about it, and then the conversation would be like, I really liked that woman, Alison, but I don't understand why X. That's a bad place to be, because that's going to put you in the no pile, probably. Or you can manage it on your own terms and say, my spouse and I have decided that, for family reasons, one of us is going to, take a pivot, whatever it is, right? I don't even know what it might be. But just manage that, because otherwise, you are going to be in a reactive position, answering a question that someone else is framing for you, or they may not ask it. So take control in that way. I think that's a very powerful thing. I would say, in terms of recruiters, Suzanne and I, we get so many people want to take us to lunch or feed us. And what you really want to do is, be professional, have them know who you are, be helpful to recruiters. Like, if a recruiter calls you or reaches out to you, even if it's a job that's not interesting to you, email them back, talk to them and say, hey, I'm not making a move at this point, but I know this woman who, she could be really interesting, or a guy. Or I know somebody who is a collector of talent, who they have their eye on all sorts of people coming up. You should talk to that person. Be helpful to the recruiters so that they could call you when they have a role that might be interesting for you. Because they're not going to be necessarily interested in having lunch until they actually have a role where you might be a fit. So it's not that they don't want to know you, it's just that you just need to think about
to Cheryl's point, think about what is important to that person, especially as a recruiter or someone who's trying to help you. Make it easy for them to help you. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, people will be like, I'm emailing you back, I sent you my CV last time. It's not attached now, but if you dig through your email, you'll find it. I'm like, you know what? Just attach it again. So just think about all of those little practical things where you can show that you nail the details, that you would be great to work with. All of those things that all of you most likely are. Do that in your interactions, and that will make people, if you're easy to help, that will be a massive asset for you.
So if I just add, because a lot of you are here because your company sponsors you to be here, so actually we also hope you're going to rise in your company and don't have to switch companies in order to move forward. And all of that advice that Alison gave you works inside your company too.
Yes.
So it's great advice.
Yes, very well.
Absolutely. So, Cheryl, you've made a number of what would be considered unconventional moves in your career, but you did it with confidence. You had some sort of true north that was guiding you, that it was the right decision at the right time. Could you speak to that? And then I just love it, both of your thoughts on how to best proactively manage your career so that it's right for you, because there's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. This is the way a career should look.
Yeah. Well, to the second point, you could tell by the story I wasn't necessarily proactive. I was very reactive in a lot of the things that I did that ended up being good for me. So I don't want to paint a picture that says these were easy decisions. None of them were. They were really, really hard decisions. And I didn't make them instantaneously, except when I knew a high priority was like my kids, so I quit the next day. Now, most of my decisions I didn't make in that vein. So I'm not sure I'm the best example of how to do that well, but I do think that you'll be in a position to make consequential decisions better if you do the things we all talked about. Know what your strengths are, know what your priorities are, and then you can start to frame things and get it in a place where you can make a good decision. Some of the jobs I've had, I also just had to say enough, like leaving the CFO job. I just finally said, okay, enough. And that's not easy either, but you need to know yourself. It all comes back to the same things and what drives you. It's not money that drives me, so I didn't need the money, I didn't think that was the great place for me to be, and I was blocking these other two people behind me that were going to do a good job, and enough time to step away.
That kind of self-imposed change is really hard. It's really hard to do, and I think that this world is so complicated right now in the last, having the pandemic and everything that we're all handling now. There's just so much going on. I feel like people are kind of exhausted and tired and almost a lot of people feel sort of beleaguered right now that I talk to, right? So I guess I would say just keep an eye on how beleaguered you feel and where your spirits are. And if you're getting really negative, and you're really down, you're probably not in a good place. So think about how to, just pay attention to who you are, and if you need to make a shift, then do it. But I see a lot of people right now who feel kind of stuck, and just watch that, I think. I've been watching that in myself, honestly, and kind of giving myself a little talking to, hey, Alison, you're not usually this cranky. Don't go there, right? So just keep an eye on things, because this is a pretty stressful few years that we all have been going through and that we're continuing to go through, I think.
So one last question, and then we're going to open it up for your questions. So start thinking about what those are going to be. So everybody in the audience here is striving to continue, with their careers and reaching their full potential. What is the one piece of advice that they could start doing tomorrow, from your perspective, to help them on that journey?
So my advice is quite simple, and that is let them see you in action. And that could be being part of a project that's where you're going to get exposed to people you wouldn't see otherwise. It might be giving a presentation. It might be sitting on a nonprofit board where people are going to see you in action. They're not going to know how talented you are until they see it and they see what you can do. That you saw in my story as well. So figure out how to take all those strengths that you have and let people see you putting them into action.
I would agree with that completely. And again, this very complicated time where you're
many of you are maybe in hybrid situations, you're doing your jobs, you're doing your work beautifully, but you need to have other people see you doing it. I will also put in a plug. All three of us are very involved civically, the network and all the women in the network. You have to be civically involved to be a member of the network. Like, it's a value that is very deep here in Chicago. But not only is it important for our community, for you all to become involved in whatever is interesting to you, but it is exactly what Cheryl just described. I've sat on boards where people will say, why does that guy you call you right back, and how do you even know him? And I'll say, because we served on a board together. I showed up, I joined his committee, or I led a committee, and I did what I said I was going to do, and they saw me, they saw my values, and they saw me at work. And it's a great way to expand your networks and just the joy in your life outside of your current corporate job.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to open up to questions. I understand there are 2 mics in the room. Who has a question?
Hi there, Shasa Sanala here from the Geese College of Business. I'm currently an MBA student. So this question is coming from a millennial leader navigating a post-pandemic world and all the expectations of it. So how did you learn to trust your own voice in a room that wasn't always designed for you?
Great question.
That wasn't always
designed for you.
Mm-hmm. So we probably all have an opinion about that, so I'll just start by jumping in and becoming comfortable with that. I'm frequently what I call the X among the Ys, whatever it might be. You know, it could be a woman, could be other things. And I have, but I have a lot to say. I always come with a point of view to a meeting. I've worked for people that said if you don't speak up, you're not getting invited back to the next meeting. I think that's a good rule. So I bring a point of view to put on the table for others to share. My point of view might change, but hopefully we'll end up with a better solution. So your point of view is valuable. So you need to remember that. And sometimes you need to jump in because you won't necessarily be called to be part of the conversation. But asking questions, having a point of view, that's how I show up, and then people start to see the value I can bring.
I think I would also add what I have noticed in the last number of years, and Suzanne, you do a lot of similar kinds of work, especially on boards. You hear people talking so much about, I want a collaborative, collegial person, right? Like people are looking for someone who can help solve problems or present their opinions, present their point of view, but not necessarily in a combative way. So if you can figure out how to maybe ask questions, or have we thought about X, or however it is where you can frame what your contributions are, and not be considered like, like there's Alison over there asking about why there's no women in the room, like figuring out how to bring that conversation to the forefront, but not be the sort of scratchy wheel, right? Or is that the right term? Mm-hmm. So a little bit is stylistically, but to Cheryl's point, getting in there and being part of the conversation.
I would echo that. In my day job, I have teams of people, and many of them are your age and generation, and a lot of times they'll think that there's a hierarchy that there isn't. And they'll voice their opinion, they'll speak up, and they'll be brilliant, like say more. And so finding an environment too that will encourage that, speak up, be pleasant to be around. Be the team member who's willing to help out beyond your job description, and very curious in terms of learning what other people do. People will want to work with people like that all day long, and it won't matter, what your background is, where you are in your career, they'll just invite you to the team. Other questions?
Hi, my name is Malvika. I'm an executive coach, and I specialize in working with executive women. My question is about how women are often pitted against each other in the workplace, and sometimes they don't even realize that that's what's happening, and as a result, some of the worst office politics that I've observed is woman-on-woman crime. How do you think women can lift each other up and support each other and recognize when they're being pitted against each other?
It's interesting. I was just telling somebody the other day that I have not experienced that here in Chicago. And I don't know if it's a uniquely Chicago thing. The women here are just incredible, incredibly supportive. From TCN women to other organizations I'm part of. People get back, they support each other, and if they don't, they're talked about. She wasn't very nice, but I do think Chicago is unique from that perspective. You don't find that in other cities. So I don't know if you have an opinion.
I agree with you. I've not run into that issue, thank goodness.
I haven't run into it in this gender ways that you're asking about, but I find it interesting that you're asking that, and it makes me wonder if maybe that's something that younger generations are seeing. I have seen just jerks and unpleasant people, both men and women. So, and those you figure out how to navigate around, but I haven't seen it. So that's an interesting question that you ask.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm Erin Staley from State Street Investment Management. You touched on the importance of delegation and working through others. Could you share strategies that worked for you as you were making that transition from working manager to leader, or that you recommend when you're coaching and training others through that transition?
Okay, so I bet none of us are all that great at it. At least I know I'm not, but I know I've worked at it. Whenever you hear yourself thinking, ugh, it's just easier if I do it myself, that is like the absolute trigger of, okay, maybe this once, Alison, but like I gotta figure this out. Like if this isn't the highest and best use of my time and there's another way to do this, I owe it to myself to figure it out. I used to take the train about an hour in, an hour back for 20 years. And I would work every second of that train ride. And I would see my male counterparts. They would be reading books, they'd be reading the paper, they'd be talking to each other. And I was like, how come they don't have as much work as I do? Well, they did. They just didn't work as many hours as I did. So I think you need to just manage yourself and say, you know what, I'm gonna put this away and it will be there tomorrow. I personally hate the 80-20 rule of just get it to 80% because I can't do that. So that's not helpful advice to some of us like me. But really actively managing yourself and thinking, am I the right person to be doing this? Can I cultivate someone else? And will that be good for them to be, learning this skill? And managing yourself. I think that, especially with, if you're running busy households or whatever your lives are like, kind of managing yourself and saying, do I need to be taking this call on the Saturday morning? If it's helpful to me and it's helpful to the clients and that makes sense, yes. But otherwise, this is something that I can do on Monday. So a lot of it I, have to manage myself. I don't know if that's helpful.
I would add to that, as the person that's leading, right, you focus a lot on the what and the why and less on the how. So that when you're dealing with this person that's going to go get everything done, be very clear about what we're trying to accomplish, the timeline, how we're going to keep, communicating with each other so we know if things are on track or off track. But give them some freedom in terms of the how, because that's where they can be creative. And they'll get it done differently probably than I would, but they'll get it done really, really well. And then I can focus on the things that I need to focus on. I have plenty of stuff to do. I don't need to do that. I'm trying to do this. So just focus on the what and the why and be clear about expectations.
Mm-hmm. So we're at time. Thank you very much for allowing us to share our thoughts with you today. All three of us will be around for lunch. There are other questions that didn't get answered, and this session is all about reflection. So I would ask for each of you to think about what is the one thing that you learned from this session today that you're going to start using tomorrow. Thank you.
That was just an amazing session. Thank you again, Suzanne, Cheryl, and Alison. I took away so many nuggets from that, and you teed me up perfectly for the segue into lunch. So we heard about identifying strengths. We heard about finding things that give you joy, and not thinking about the next job, but what are the options that I have. And so here at the network, we like to try to not only have inspirational advice from the stage, but we also want you to take something back that you can actually action. So in your packets, there is a two-pager entitled Instructions for Career and Personal Lifeline Activity. You don't need to do it now. But there's about a page and a half of instructions, and then there is a graph that Cheryl talked about. And so on the horizontal axis is time. On the vertical axis it's divided between good experiences and bad experiences. And what you're going to want to do when you have a little bit more time to reflect is actually graph your life. And you can start wherever you want to start, whatever point that you remember is most meaningful to you in what makes you up, what makes your essence. And just draw that line. Maybe sometimes it'll be in the middle, and sometimes in our lives we're having great, wonderful things happening to us, and we're way above that middle horizontal axis, and then in other times everything that could go wrong is going wrong, and we're way below. And so graph that out and write some notes next to those peaks and valleys to say, you know, what was it that was making my life, career-wise or personally, so great? Or what was it that is really bringing me down? And sometimes it could actually be going in opposite directions too. So I don't think it's wrong to necessarily have a graph where you might be at the same point in time up and down. And I'll use an example of, I was pregnant with my second daughter. We were very excited to be welcoming our second child, and so that was a very joyful time in my personal life. At the same time, my husband and I were both partners at Arthur Andersen, and the Enron scandal had just happened, and Arthur Andersen was about to go down the tubes. So if I would have been, or if I do graph my career life map, it was going a bit in opposite directions. But sometimes, or I think a lot of time, it can actually be moving in the same direction. And you talked about some of those things, Cheryl, that if things aren't working in your personal life, that probably is also going to affect your career too. So take some time to do this when you do have time. And then the final thing, and you talked about this, I think all of you in different ways, is use this to talk to someone about it. So a coach that you might have, a mentor, someone that you really trust at work, and it's always good to have yourself reflected back at you. And so hopefully this will be a great tool for you as you map out that next opportunity for you in career and in life. So I'll close here. We're going to have lunch, and I just want to have another round of applause for these amazing women. Thank you.
You know, 1 week ago, Maria and Laura reached out to me and asked me if I would be introducing our next speaker, and I could not have been any happier to do that. Because, you know, 13 or 14 years ago, I was promoted to a new job within my company. And as part of that promotion, they gave me the opportunity to work with an executive coach. My first meeting with my coach, the coach asked me the first question, and the question was, are you happy with your brand? I was lost. I just thought, I mean, what is he talking about? I'm not McDonald's. I'm not Cracker Barrel, thank goodness these days. Like, what is the brand? And you know, actually, the brand is what walks in the room before you do. your brand walks into the interview before your resume. Nobody will read your resume if your brand has not made it compelling for you to earn that seat in the interview process. So today we are blessed, incredibly blessed to have Diane Primo with us to talk to us about executive presence. Because at the end of the day, we talked about our value, we talked about the power that we harness when we walk in a room. But the important thing is what you do is as important as how you do it. So executive presence is what makes a difference between getting a promotion or not getting that promotion. And Diane spent the last 30 years in communication and PR. She was a general manager at Walker Oats. She was president of product management at Ameritech and SPC. She was chief marketing officer and executive committee member at CDW. And as brilliant women always happen to do, when you are so good at what you do, you stop working for somebody else and you build your own company. So she's now the founder and CEO of Purpose Brand. And she is the only female Black CEO of a purpose-driven organization. And oftentimes we see people, we walk into rooms, we go to these conferences, and we are so happy to represent women. And we always tell our more junior people, representation matters, because if you see it, you can be it. Well, guess what? Diane was the first. She's still the only Black female CEO of purpose-driven organization. She didn't see it. She decided she wanted to be it. And here she is, and she will talk to us about brand and executive presence. Thank you, Diane.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I really appreciate that. And let's get started. All right, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about your brand. And in there also is executive presence. So first of all, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Okay. How many of you in this room today think about yourself as a brand? Raise your hand. Good job. I've been in rooms where one or two people raise their hand. Okay? How many of you actually invest in your brand? Look around, ladies. Raise those hands up high who are investing in their brands. Okay? Those of you with hands down, you better rethink that. Okay? So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about your brand. It is a proprietary system that we use called Brand Slate. For the people who are marketers in the room, it will remind you a lot about marketing, right? Today, the point of this meeting, the point of this session for me is to make sure you understand how to be seen, how to be chosen, and how to be paid or not paid if you don't do it right for who you really are. Okay, that's very, very important for you to understand and take away. Right? What I find fascinating is that people go looking for their brand when they need it, okay? And when do you need it? You need it when you're up for the next promotion. You need it when you're up for a salary raise. You need it when you're up for a bonus, when you're up for a job, when you're up for an opportunity, you're up for a speaking engagement, a book deal, a sponsorship. You need a brand. When you're up for a new opportunity, a bigger assignment. That's what this is about. So define your brand before you're hungry for it. And this is intended to help you figure out how to do it. But we can't do it for you. You have to be intentional about it and do it yourself. Everybody in this room is born with nothing, right? Okay. Same thing with your brand. It's a blank slate. All of you have a blank slate. How you paint that slate over time is either intentional or it happens by default. If you don't manage it and control it and own it, it doesn't get you to where you need to be, okay? Some people are natural at this. They just do it without thinking. Others really have to put it into practice, okay? The name of my company is Purpose Brand. We are about helping others put their purpose into practice, and that means their commercial purpose into practice. We're a marketing company, okay? So this is about how you shape your own personal leadership story on purpose, okay? Let's talk about Brand Slate a little bit because we're going to start unbundling it at this point. So first, what is it? It's your professional identity by design, okay? You're co-creating this every day. Every single day you're putting things on this slate. The right signal will give you the right opportunity. We'll talk about that. But what does Brand Slate do? It helps others understand your value. It helps you build trust. That's really important, very important in the marketplace. But more than anything else, it signals that you are ready for the next opportunity. We talked about all the opportunities that are out there for us women, right? But you got to access them and you take advantage of them. Next slide. Brand Slate matters. Why? Hey ladies, there's a big ROI on it. Okay? Big ROI. And I heard a lot of people talk about the resume. 70% of employers say the brand beats the resume. And we've all said it when we're hiring people. You know, it's great what I see on a piece of paper. When it comes down to it, let's see what you do and how you do it, right? We all feel that way when we're hiring people. And do not think people are not calling on you when you walk in the door, especially at your level, because they know other executives in Chicago, in the nation. They'll pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm about to interview so-and-so. Or, oh, I'm considering her for a board. Or, oh, I'm considering her for this. Right? I hear people, yep, they will call you. They say, what do you think of her? This is when you need your brand. Because you need someone on the outside. Maybe you don't interview that well. But if somebody else is selling for you, you still might get that job. So it really, really does matter, right? 13 times higher pay for visible leaders. Yes, it's at the top, but they've managed their visibility and they get paid a lot more than somebody who's not managing it. And there's a trick to managing it because you got to be authentic about it as well. And guess what? They get the bigger assignments. They get to drive the growth. 62% of them, of those high visibility professionals, drive growth in companies and organizations. So those people are excellent at this. It makes a difference. Let me tell you one more thing, right? For those business people in the room, because I'm sure there are many of them. The top 15 companies in the US have a huge, tremendous amount of value. 80% of their value is driven by intangible assets. What are those? The finance people can tell you in the room. They know what they are, right? But IP might be in it. Software might be in it. But brand is definitely in it. And I look at that and say, you put all that together, and that is about brand as we defined it, right? So brand is really driving the value of corporations. You need to think of yourself, I'm a mini business. I'm a mini business, okay? And brand, for me, is important and core to my value proposition, okay? So change your mindset. I'm going to break down Brand Slate because there are 6 steps. And they're all on the board. And they're also in front of you, by the way. There's a package here called Brand Slate for you as a takeaway. So everything's here. You can take notes on it, et cetera. But everything's here. 6 steps. Number 1, your leadership promise. What is your leadership promise? What is it? It is your value. It is your personal value. That is your leadership promise. Think about it like a tagline. What's your tagline? Okay? What are people going to remember you for? What's your value? What is your signature strength? Step 2. What is your signature strength? What is the unique feature that differentiates you from others? What is it? Okay? What is that unique feature? You need to have one. Think about it, right? Number 3, core audience. That is your decision makers. Who's making decisions about you? Your boss? Your boss's boss? A powerful VP that sits in another chair because he has the operating power within that company? Salespeople? Who are your decision makers? That's important for you to understand. That's really important for you to understand. Because those people you need a connection to, but those people you want to be visible with. Visibility is really important. Proof points. How do I think about that? What is your evidence? What is your individual evidence? That's really important for you to put those scores on the board. So it's the track record that people talk about. But it means a lot more than track record. It's about what you work on as well. Zone of excellence. That's number 5. That's an interesting one. That's a really interesting one because that is your personal lane. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And the last one is executive presence. You heard her talk about executive presence and the importance of it. Everybody's mentioned the word executive presence. Like, what is that? Okay. But you know it when you don't see it. What is executive presence? It's your credibility engine is what it is. Okay? So look at this. This is about you. But also let's think about it externally in the marketplace. Think about it from a product standpoint, right? We're marketers. Think about it from a product standpoint. Your leadership promise, hey, it's your tagline. Your signature strength, it's a unique feature. There's lots of them in businesses. Your core audience, that's your target market. Your proof point, case studies. If you're in a B2B business, they look for case studies. Consumers' testimonials. Other businesses, just proof points. Why should I believe that your identity is real? You are who you say you are. What case studies do you personally have? How many do you have? How are they packaged? How are you communicating them? More importantly, how are they being observed and who is seeing them? Zone of excellence. This one is always my personal favorite, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. But it is what you are super good at and super known for, right? Amazon, it's convenience. Nike, it's performance. Okay. It's what they are known for. Almost think about it almost like, it's my secret sauce. Anybody I go to, they kind of think of me for this. That's what they're going to come to me for. At the end of the day, they're going to come to me because I have that excellence. And so the last one, executive presence, is really how that brand shows up every day. It's the entire experience, right? We talk about brand as being an experience. Think about executive presence from a product standpoint. It's the experiential interaction with you every day. Same thing with a product. A brand is a total experience. It's not a logo. Okay? It's not a tagline. It's not an ad. It is, if I'm a business and I'm selling something, it's my experience with the person who's on the salesperson on the other side of the counter. It's who I talk to. It's the material that I see. It's what I read. It's like what's on my website, what's out in the marketplace, what's on LinkedIn. It's everywhere, right? So that is really important. Now, if you take all 6 of these and you connect them, and it's clear, and you're sending off the right signals, it tells others who to choose, who to believe in, and more importantly, who to bet on, right? Everybody's taking some kind of risk when they're engaging with people because it's an investment on their time. They want a return. They want to make sure they're getting that return. So we're going from identity to proof to signal when we talk about brand slate. Let me kind of put that in perspective. Steps 1 to 3 that I talked about, that's about who I am. That's your identity. That's about the leadership promise. It's about the signature strength. It's about that core audience. That's forming your identity. Okay? 4 to 6, step 4 to 6, that's what I've proven. Okay? That's my proof, my evidence that I talked about, right? What is that? Do anybody remember what that is? Help me. My proof points. Remember those? My zone of excellence, my executive presence. Now think about this for a second. So steps 1 to 3 are identity, and steps 4 to 6 are what I've proven. So can you have if you have identity without proof, what happens? You're not taken seriously. Pain in my butt, they don't do anything, you know? Okay, they're just in my office wasting my time, okay? I have people like that. Or if you have proof, but no identity, what do you have? People don't remember you. You did stuff, but you don't have identity, so who's gonna see it, right? We talked about your decision makers. We talked about all this stuff. There's nobody to see it. That's a problem. The result of when all of this is perfectly aligned is the signal. And we refer to that as the generative signal. We'll talk about that later. But it's the signal that others receive. Okay? And why is that important to you? It's important to you because of the ROI things I talked about earlier. Right? Okay. We're getting to an exercise soon. A slate doesn't just define you, it positions you. That's really important for you to know. And why did I use the word positioning? Well, I'm a marketer, number one. But I know that choice stems from position when you are marketing and when you are branding. A position is how a product sits in your brain or how you sit in the brain, and how a consumer or a professional business person makes the choice to choose you over someone else. That positioning has to be really strong. The position has to be really relevant. It has to resonate, okay? It has to have some kind of energy around it. And if you're able to do that by connecting all of these pieces, why should they choose that person over there, John? And Jane, man, she was something. So it doesn't define you, it positions you, and that's really an important insight. Okay? Now I'm going to break it down a little bit. I'll go to some notes, make sure I don't forget anything, but you have your packets in front of you as well. So let's first talk about the leadership promise, okay? And that's the definition of your unique leadership value. That's your tagline. And that tagline needs to be memorable and thoughtful, right? And that's really, really important, to be memorable and be thoughtful. When we think about this, the person who I think about when I think about this is Indra from PepsiCo, if everybody remembers her. She was one of the first CEOs of a major CPG company. I worked in CPG, so that was meaningful to me, right? She grew up in India, so she had an incredible ability to connect with people, an amazing ability to connect with people. And her leadership promise was about being in an environment where she could deliver strategy in an empathetic way. Because you always have to make hard decisions when you're doing things, right? But she had an amazing amount of empathy, an amazing amount of strategic ability that she combined in a unique way. And for that reason, she was loved, okay? But her leadership promise was to really kind of get out there and lead the company with strong strategy, but in a very empathetic way. Now, here's something that's really important about this. Your promise must be clear enough to repeat and strong enough to stick. So why do you do a tagline? You do a tagline for memorability. That's why you do it. So think about your leadership promise like that. You want to be remembered for that. And when you think of some of the great women leaders, they are all remembered for things. You can kind of go through them and then people can tick them off. Okay, let's go to the next one on this one. And that's your signature strength. That one is a very interesting one because it's a unique trait. And the brand that comes to mind for me for this actually is a product brand, because I think you can all understand this brand, right? Nike. It's one of my favorite brands from a marketing standpoint. And if you think about the unique feature that they have, that I think they kind of do it better than anybody else, because this is the skill, the trait, or the energies others consistently count on from you. I can always count on Nike for a highly motivating story. They motivate me as I pass. It resonates. I'm that everyday person that you see who really isn't the best athlete, but I like to consider myself someone who works out. But their ads speak to me. It's very motivational. It's always about storytelling. It's passionate, and every time I pass their ad, I have a little smile, because I also think they do a great job of talking to women. And then they also always take risk. When there's something that's a cultural moment, they lean into that moment in a very inspirational way. That is their signature strength. They're really, really good at it. Okay? Let's go to the next one. This is the core audience. This one's easy. Okay? The people whose trust and sponsorship you need to rise. Your decision makers. But trust and sponsorship you need to rise. That's really important. How many people understand the difference between a mentor and a sponsor here? Do you understand the difference? Not enough people. Okay? A mentor is someone who may mentor you, give you guidance, etc. But what you want is you want sponsors. You don't want mentors. And you know why you want sponsors? Because when you're not in the room, that sponsor would say, we should give that project to Jane. We should give Jane that promotion. Or Susie or Judy, right? Let's give her that. Let's put her up for the board. Like, they are in your corner talking on your behalf when you're not around. They are sponsoring you. Like you are sponsoring a product. It's a very, very important distinction, because women tend to have mentors and they don't have sponsors, because they don't actively cultivate sponsors. Because it's about the brand slate is the way you do that. And you got to get some sponsors, people who are going to have your back when you are not in the room, when it counts. Okay? Let's go to proof points. One of my favorite, real world moments that validate your impact. And let me tell you, not all moments are the same, right? This is about case studies. Remember I said that? We know from research that high visibility assignments are worth a lot more from a money standpoint. They get you a lot more, right? So you're looking to, you want to work on things that are high priority or big or have an executive's interest. Or if the portfolio is crap, work on an outlier and make it into something big that it's the only thing they have to talk about. So proof points are really important, and how you get those and structure those and what you go for is important. But you want a series of case studies that represent your brand. And they need to be packaged and coherent and have quantitative numbers around them. Here's what I did, or impact numbers around them. You want results around those case studies. You got to think about how you get those, and do you have enough case studies? It does make a difference in where you go. It makes a difference to your future. Case studies are really important here. Okay? Who's got a good case study bank? Raise your hand. Love it. Put the hand higher. Share your crap. Come on, put it up there. That's pretty good. But everybody here, work on your case studies. You're looking for the bigger assignments, the bigger opportunities, the bigger priorities. Okay? Or make your small priority everybody else's priority, and they move you. I had that happen once. They said, we're moving her because she's working on low priority stuff and she's getting everybody to make it a priority. Okay? You can do that, and that's about people. And then people say, oh, here's what's going on. Okay? You have share of work. Okay, what I call a share of other people's work that are working on your behalf, which adds to how you get things done. Okay? But proof points, that's really important. Okay? Case studies, you all want case studies. There's no one here that can be without a case study. And multiples help. Zone of excellence, okay? This one is actually one of my favorites because people don't think about this. I was at a meeting and I had a president of a very large company there and a CMO of an equally large company there and a few other people. They were talking about this. And what they said was, double down on what you're good at. You don't have to be good at everything, but figure out what that is and double way down on it, okay? Amazon is convenience. Look at the platform that they built. Nike's performance. Sheryl Sandberg, woohoo, bad babe, right? Started off in public service, went to Google, went to Facebook. What is her zone of excellence? She brings clarity to chaos in a hyper-growth environment, and she's known for it. So in the days when those companies were building, they were adding hundreds of people a day. You know, think about bringing that kind of workforce into your organization, organizing them, getting them focused, getting them trained, getting them, you know, inserted into the system so they were productive. She's really good at that. She likes the woman thing too, but that is her thing, and people recognize her for it. Okay, what is your zone of excellence? It is your lane. What is it going to be? And those folks knew what theirs was. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty impressive. I don't think I even had that kind of clarity. I was like, that's good. And they had that kind of clarity, and they've had it for a long time. And they spoke about it, said, you don't be good at everything, but double down on what you're really good at. Because you can build from there. Okay? This is the one that is sort of the elephant in the room, right? It's the executive presence, number 6. It's on the proof side. It's the credibility engine, how your brand slate shows up in high-stakes moments. And let me tell you, it's about consistency and aggregation of observable things with regard to you. One of the people that I admire, and when I think about executive presence, and everybody knows Melody Hobson in this room, right? She always shows up with a strong executive presence. We'll talk a little bit about what that is. But there's a calmness to her credibility and her pacing and how she interjects and how she brings clarity to a situation. She has an incredible executive presence. You all recognize people who have an incredible executive presence. Not everybody does, but some people do. And it's palpable. You want to look at those people and learn from them and say, what are they doing? But I can tell you it's a consistency of behavior where they're operating in such a way in high-stakes moments, and that's really important. Now, I know she loses her crap just like everybody else does when something happens, right? But overall, she's got that presence, and it really does make a difference. Let's do a little deep dive a little bit on this one, right? And my speaker here said this. She said, when your name earns respects in rooms, you haven't entered. That's really what executive presence is. When your name earns respect in rooms, you haven't entered. And when they enter the room, they're like, oh, she's here. Like, oh, did she walk in the room? Right, people are all, the heads turn. You want to be a head turner, right? And what is that about? It's about gravitas, steadiness and clarity and ambiguity. It's about communication. Now this is important. It's about listening, right? Everybody hears that. It's about listening. But it's about your ability to be heard. You don't have to raise your voice, but people are listening. So it's about listening, but your ability to be heard. You have to listen, but people want to listen to you. And it's both in executive presence. right? Just not one, it's both of them. And then authentic appearance, what is that? Like, what is authenticity? Does anybody know? It's one of those vague, ambiguous things. But what it is the alignment of behavior, your voice and tone, and your appearance. That's why I call Melody out too, because we all know where she shops. She always looks like, okay, I got it together, I'm kind of the same. Her voice and tone's always, relatively even, and her behavior matches that, okay? So, Melody's a friend, I can say that. But very, very, very important. So you need those three when you start thinking of executive presence, okay? But here's the trick. This is about consistency, continuity, and sort of showing up the same way over time, so people can observe it and feel it and it becomes a pattern and they know you for it, right? It is about executive presence. So let's talk a little bit more about this before we get there. We're going to give you an exercise. So on your table, you should have something that says brand slate. You guys have that? It'll be under documents, right? The steps are all on the page for you to take away. Some prompts for you to help you do this on your own, right? And then I think there are also some examples in here. If you go to the next page, it takes you through each one of the steps and it gives you some room to write. We're only going to do 1 and 5, which is your leadership promise and your zone of excellence, right? The first thing I want you to do is pair up. 2 of you come together. Find a second. Find a partner. Bring the slate, find a partner, get a pen. Find a partner, find a partner, find a partner. I want you guys partner up, partner up. Partner up. Okay, anybody don't have a partner? Get your partner. That's number 1. Okay. Get your partner. Okay. She's my timekeeper. Bija. Bija doesn't have a partner. No, she's the timekeeper. Can't be your partner. Abija, is there an extra? Does anybody not have a partner? Anybody not have a partner? Okay, that's fine. There's 5 at that table. There's 5 at that table. You can go grab one, Bija. Okay, that's another one. Okay, I'm looking for a partner. Okay, so you will have. Okay, let's stop for a second. You will have questions 1 and 5. You have 5 minutes to reflect on your own, all by yourself, about what your leadership promise is and what your zone of excellence is. You've got 5 minutes. Think about it. It's not enough time, but think about it. Once you have done that, you're gonna join your partner, and then you are going to, for 4 minutes, you have an opportunity to explain your leadership promise and your zone of excellence to your partner. But your partner is then going to say, here's what I've heard. And your partner is going to say, here's what I think you should amplify. So that's important, because what people don't realize is feedback is extremely important, right? Products do research in the marketplace. We get feedback every day from our customers. That's what we want. We're testing, we're learning, we're tracking. We don't do enough in the feedback loop. Okay, we think, 360s, they're horrible. They're great. You want to know what people think about you. Okay, and you want to ask for them, look at them, pay attention to them, right? But you need to get feedback, because that feedback helps you grow. You will remain stagnant without that feedback. Okay, so they will give you feedback. So you have 5 minutes to reflect, 4 minutes, each partner has 4 minutes to present their point of view, and for the partner to give them input. And then at the very, very end, we've got 2 minutes that's going to be dedicated to a micro commitment. We'll explain what that is, but you're going to make a micro commitment here, today, to yourself. Not to me, not to your partner, to you. It's about how you are going to change your behavior in some way. Okay? Let's begin. Clock start, 5 minutes reflection time. All right, we're going to put pencils down. You ready? Are we good for time? All right, pencils down. Okay, pair up with your partner. The first 5 minutes, you tell your partner, talk to your partner, and then your partner then will give you feedback. Here's what I've heard, and here's what I'd amplify if I were you. Very important, okay? Okay, switch it up. Change. Hey guy, hello. Wrap up your session. You're going to change. The other partner should be presenting. Okay? Can the other partner please start presenting? You have 4 minutes. Okay, last exercise here, right? This is about your micro commitment. I'm going to give you some background before you do it, all right? First of all, it has to be observable. Visible, ladies. This commitment has to be visible. Has to be time-bound. So it has to be some kind of date. It has to be within your control, not within somebody else's. It's a micro commitment. You are making that commitment to yourself. Let me give you an example. Do I have one? Yes. Okay. This is starting Monday. I will show up by or as a clarity-based strategist by opening every meeting with 1-sentence goal and sending a 3-bullet decision recap within 24 hours. That's just an example. But what that's long, okay? That's really long. But this is starting Monday, I will show up as. What are you going to show up as? Okay, or do, right? By opening, by doing something within a time period. But it's got to be observable, time-bound, and within your control. So make yourself a micro commitment. This is starting you on your journey, okay? Make yourself a commitment. What can you do that you haven't done before, or you've done once and you know you should do it all the time, that will make others see you as being an innovator, a strategist, an executioner, anything that goes into your brand portfolio. What's your own personal micro commitment? 2 minutes. 2 minutes to come up with one. All right, was that fun? Yeah? Good. Get ready. We're on the journey, right? All right. Now, we've gone through the brand slate, and you have the guide to how to finish it for yourself, right? A slate's evolving, by the way. You got to figure out, especially what's that zone of excellence. That's really, really important. What that unique feature is, what your promise is, getting those case studies in line. That decision maker thing isn't as tough, but sometimes there are decision makers that you're not aware of. Make sure you have an ear to the ground where you understand power centers in companies. It's very, very important, right? Like a lot of people are saying yes to that, okay? So this is about preparing you to ready your signal, okay? And that signal is really important. So I'm also going to tell you what can derail the signal, because that says, I'm not ready for it, right? Let's talk about that. Inconsistency. Saying one thing and signaling another. I don't know. I have no idea who that person is, right? This is a funny story. I had a boss that I actually thought was a lunatic. We would always send around messages internally, at least all the women would, that said, this guy is really like, is on medication, whatever. It's saying one thing and signaling another is something you just can't do. It's got to be aligned and it's got to be consistent. Invisibility. Doing the work, but not being seen. We women are famous for that, right? You're happy to sit at your desk. It's all about results. Someone's going to figure out the great work you're doing. No, okay? Because Joe over there is over there blabbing his mouth telling everybody what he's doing, okay? He's on the golf course. He's playing pickleball. I mean, he is out there working it, okay? So make sure they can see what you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean you don't support your team. You don't give your team credit. You give them credit. It counts. It really, really counts. But it does mean you can take a little of that credit for yourself. Okay? I've seen women where they've done incredible things, and their boss, who's been a CEO, has given it to the male executive lead across the hall to present at the board meeting their work. So do not get pimped. Seriously, okay? Okay. And this is where what I call the say your name principle comes in. It's say your name. Make sure they can say your name in rooms that you are not in. So the invisibility factor is a big one. Do not be invisible. It doesn't work. They don't care. Doesn't matter. They're happy to have you work, and not give you that next move. So you're feeling stuck, you need to look at that, okay? Perfectionism. We are perfectionists, women. Our mothers were perfectionists. We had to look perfect before you walked through the door. Well, not anymore. But you used to have to look perfect before you walked out the door, right? Don't wait until it's perfect. Not worth it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be good enough to launch. Good enough for you to do what you need to do with it, okay? It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be visible. Okay, Sarah Blakely, she's a great example of this. Spanx was not perfect when it was launched. It is a billion-dollar company. And if you wait for perfection, you're going to miss opportunities, you're going to miss market timing, you're just going to miss it. Don't do that. It doesn't have 80, 85%, 80% times 75, it's good, go. Because most successful leaders are risk takers. And what that means is they go before things are final. So your ability to make decisions is critical. If you are not a decision maker, start to be one, because people can see when there's a waffler in the room. Right, Maria? Like, oh, I can't really make a decision. Can you make a decision? Oh. They can see when you're willing to give up your decisions to somebody else. Okay? When they're yours to make. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be visible. The generative signal, we've talked about that. It's the signal that says you're ready for the next big thing. That's what it is. So you got doing all that brand slate. The reason you're doing is the result is the generative signal. You're sending off that vibe, hey, it's me over here, right? Give me the more money. I want that promotion. I want that opportunity. I want that big assignment. I want that sponsorship deal. I want that book. I want that speaker engagement. All that. I want that board seat. Keep that signal strong. Make sure your brand slate is clear and has great integrity. And that executive presence thing that's there, that is a big deal. That is a huge part of your proof that I'm ready for something bigger. A strong brand slate triggers this perception. You're seen as someone who can. This one is one you should really study. It's on that page, right? Shape cultures that foster innovation and adaptability. What do businesses care about now? Agility, adaptability, problem solving, critical thinking, right? You want to be seen as someone who can shape a culture like that. Develop people by mentoring, enabling others. That's why I'm saying you gotta give the folks the credit. You gotta have other people's backs so they move up, so people want to be associated with you. Oh my gosh, her people are getting all the opportunities. That's a good wire. That's a good thing to have in the network. That if you work for so-and-so, you work for her, you're going to be going somewhere. You want people to work for you because they're going to be going somewhere. Build sustainable value that outlasts your current role. Everybody knows that because we all leave. Okay? We all leave, just about. Look behind you. How long did your infrastructure and plumbing stay there? Oh, I look. Stay there forever. I said, why are you still using that? Like, that should be gone by now, right? Sustainable. Make a difference while you're there and make it last. Because even if they ask you to leave, people are like, well, why'd they let her go? See? Right? You want them to ask those questions, like people, doubters, like, oh my God, she was great. Look at all that she did. Solve by enabling, not just fixing. It's not just about the fix. It's about what you enable in the process of the fix. That's what's really important here. Never forget that. And then, obviously, you're going to build long-term value, right? If you're going to do all that, what you're talking about is a system-wide level up. A system-wide level up. Because most of you in the room are directors or VPs or something senior. You want to level up to that next role, right? And they're not going to know that unless your signal is strong and you've done a few of these things, so they know you're ready for a system-wide change. Does that make sense? Okay. The slate earns you the signal, but the signal earns you the room. I love that one. It earns you the room. The slate earns you the signal, but the signal earns you the room. And you want to own the room. Who doesn't want to own the room? Raise your hand if you don't want to own the room. Raise your hand if you want to own the room. Own the room! Come on! Okay? I forget Beyonce's song. What is that? Women, we are. What is that song? What? Women run the world. That's what we want to do, right? And what they see. Signal strength. If it's strong, read that. Yell it out. Let's give her more. If it's weak, what do you get? Nice job, ladies. You can stay there forever, stuck. You don't need any more money. You know, I give that to Joe over there because he's really visible. He's working that brand slate. But I know you're happy because you don't say anything. You're not visible, right? So I don't do anything for you. Happens, right? That's what happens. She's good here, but not sure she's built for more. You want to demonstrate you are built for more. That's it.
I hope you have tons of takeaways from this wonderful afternoon and morning of remarkable women speakers and meeting people at your tables and afterward at the networking event. My name is Karyn Esken. I'm a network member, and I am on the Launchpad committee. And my job is to take the last 5 hours and recap them in 5 minutes, starting now. So I will say thanks to Nerissa and Allie, I have this year tried to use a little ChatGPT to help me out. So if I haven't done it perfectly, I have to scroll a little, but it was very helpful. Okay, our first presentation was from Julie Johnson, thank you so much, who taught us that we have access to 3 types of power. Position power, which comes from a title or role, expert power, which comes from our knowledge and skills, and personal power, which comes from within, the most important type. Personal power is important because it doesn't depend on external factors. It's built on confidence, integrity, self-awareness, and authenticity. We strengthen it when we know who we are, when we act with courage, when we speak our truth, and surround ourselves with other empowered people. At the same time, we need to be mindful of when we give our power away, those power robbers, by over-apologizing or hesitating or shrinking within other people's presence. The key takeaway from this presentation is personal power is an inside job. It's not about waiting for permission. It's about choosing in any moment to step fully into your own power. And I want to thank Julie Johnson for leading us through such an insightful and empowering session. 1. Okay, next, 2. We had the wonderful opportunity to listen to Nerissa Brown and Ari Garimella, and they focused on leading in the age of AI. The big message, AI works best when we marry its strengths with our human strengths. Generative AI can draft, analyze, and problem solve at scale, but it still needs us to guide, refine, and apply judgment. We explored both the opportunities like autonomy, scalability, creativity, and solving previously intractable problems. And we looked at the challenges of AI, hallucinations. Those are kind of scary, especially if this starts telling me that we listened to something that we never listened to. Go buy Dove. Weird stuff's going to come out now. Hallucinations, security concerns, and building trust, especially when people don't fully understand what's happening under the hood. What often holds us back isn't the technology itself, but lack of training or feeling it doesn't apply to our roles. The takeaway is AI isn't replacing leaders, it's reshaping how we lead. Success will come from experimenting, training teams, and designing career paths that integrate AI skills. In the end, the leaders who thrive will be the ones who combine the best of human insight with the best of AI. Okay, number 3. Hold on, I'm not on the right one. Okay. Our panel was Suzanne Burns, Cheryl Francis, and Alison Ranney. Ranney, sorry, Alison. They explored what it really means to lead with confidence. Their story showed that confidence isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing your strengths, building relationships, and being willing to step into new spaces. They reminded us that careers don't always follow a straight path or a straight plan. And I thought it was really fascinating how you really can only see the path you had in retrospect, which was certainly true for me and will probably be true for many of you. The successful leaders know how to simplify complexity, teach and mentor each other, and build strategic relationships, while keeping priorities like family front and center. We also heard practical advice. Find your sweet spot where strengths, passions, and value to others overlap. Define success on your own terms, and remember that relationships, as we said before, are critical. Spend time cultivating them. Just as importantly, craft your story so you can market your strengths to potential employers, weaving in both your skills and the impact that you've made. The takeaway again is clear. Confidence grows from self-awareness, authenticity, and action. Leading with confidence means bringing your strengths forward and using them to create positive impact for others. And then I have to go somewhere else for this, so hold on. And our final presentation was from Diane Primo, which was very exciting, if I can find it. Hold on, sorry. Okay. Here is our last one. Diane's session focused on shaping and signaling your leadership readiness through what's called your brand slate. At its core, it's about being intentional with how you show up and the stories others tell about you, especially when you're not in the room. The 6 elements include your leadership promise, the one line that defines your unique value. Your signature strength, what people can always count on you for. Your core audience, those who trust and sponsorship you need. Proof points, real moments like case studies that validate your impact. Your zone of excellence, where you consistently shine. And your executive presence, how your credibility shows up in high-stakes moments. If you don't define your slate, others will define it for you. Done well, it builds trust, positions you for bigger opportunities, and signals that you're ready for board-level or enterprise-scale impact. In short, your brand slate doesn't just describe you, it positions you as the leaders people want to bet on. And remember, this was a great line from Diane, the slate earns you the signal, and the signal earns you the room. So let's all go and earn the rooms we're in. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so Karyn has been doing this for the past 4 years, how she does this amazing recap. Karyn, thank you. I know that it took time, but brilliant way of bringing AI and wrapping it all together. What an incredible day. I feel like I just got on this stage and welcomed you, and we're at the end of the day. And I really hope that you got as much out of this as I did. I got to sit in the back of the room and kind of watch the dynamics and listen to the speakers. I hope you build connections. I hope you continue those connections to me. It's about keeping the energy in the room as you exit the room and beyond, the one thing that we hear from the survey every year is, how can we stay together? How can we stay connected? So you have everybody's contact information. There are some people that you may not have. We may resend the contact list to everybody electronically, but please take the time to get to know these people. These are your people. These are the people that are going to support you and help you as you kind of journey out. They're going to hold you accountable. And I really hope that each of you take some of these new ideas that you've learned and are going to be able to take them out. A big thanks to our sponsors, everyone that sponsored. So grateful. We have some really fun swag from the Geese School of Business as well as from State Street, those fabulous beach towels. If you haven't seen them, please grab them on your way out. And then please join us for our cocktail reception. It's right next door. Continue the conversation, celebrate success. And again, thank you for investing in yourself. I know this is hard to take time for you, but we are so grateful that you're here, and know that the Chicago Network is here to support each of you as you continue on in your leadership journeys to that C-suite role. Thank you so much.